What's up, everybody? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Wow, I already started off with a fuck up, but people are used to that. But I got Adam Scorgie today. Awesome filmmaker. I'm really huge fan of his. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast, London Real. He's well known for The Union, the business behind getting high. And similar to myself, he talks about how basically, you know, the history of it, the propaganda of trying to sell the idea how it's unsafe, and he doesn't smoke weed, so it's not like he's trying to sell you something that, you know, obviously is harmful for you. And he's also started his own podcast called the Scorgie Exchange. He's doing a film coming up later this year called The Culture High, which I'm really excited to talk about because he has some really huge names in there, and somebody that we talked about a little bit before we started recording, Graham Hancock, somebody I'm a huge fan of, and he got Rogan in there.
Powerful Graham Hancock.
Yeah, the powerful Graham Hancock. He has Snoop Dogg. He has a bunch of people, some of the Young Turk cast, I believe, and Cara Santa Maria, who actually is going to be on this podcast, I believe, next month. And so tons of cool people. Can't wait for that because I think it's definitely a subject. I think you took something that was about, you know, the history of marijuana, and it seems like from the teaser that you put out, you're looking at the broader picture. And Graham Hancock, we talked about it before we started recording. He's actually the theme song to my podcast. Before I even started the podcast, I wrote the song, and I used Graham Hancock talking about consciousness and what you said before the show, and that whole thing of if we don't have the freedom to control our own consciousness, then what freedom do we have? You know, and you know,
exactly.
how we try to suppress
as a free sovereign individual, that is our right. You know, and to have legislation determine what we can or cannot do to expand our consciousness is ludicrous, especially if it's not doing harm to others or others' property. That it really doesn't need to be in the hands of the government. But as he said, it's genius that they've convinced us that not only should we not have control of it, but that we should put it in the hands of the government, and that they should legislate how we control our consciousness. It's really, you got to kind of admire how the irony of how this has come together after all these years.
Yeah, how we've kind of been tricked, into, and the thing is, I'm a big believer of that in the 60s and stuff like that, when people were so anti-war, and I think a lot of that maybe did have some something to do with like doing conscious expand. Oh, we have a special guest, Adam's son, if you hear him in the background.
Yeah. Little man's piping in the back here. I tried to hide in the basement, but he followed me, so Ryder back here too.
So maybe we'll ask him some questions. What's his favorite cartoon? And but yeah, so what? Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. I think that there might be something to the fact that they realize that it's easier to trick people to go to unjustified wars, trick people into so many different things and stay in this rhythm of being this machine. I work, I do, you know, I pay my bills and all that stuff, and I think it's easier to do that than it would be if we were doing, like, you know, smoking weed or doing acid and doing things that really put things in perspective, or, you know, ayahuasca, you know, Graham Hancock talks a lot about, and Rogan. So I think that there probably is a method to their madness of the idea of trying to convince people not to do anything that kind of expands your thinking, but for the sake of, it's probably easier to control people, you know, social control.
Well, it's like the comment we had in the Union where it's like, you know, you can't legislate morality, but yet that's what countries still seem to try to do, right? Is they keep trying to legislate morality. They try to tell you. But now the big thing, and this is where our film The Culture is coming in, is there is a huge global cultural shift that's starting to take place, you know, around the world. People looking at drug laws differently, and specifically cannabis laws, and just seeing that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to spend resources and take them away from finding murderers and rapists and people that are doing true harms, and put people in cages for minor marijuana possession or minor trafficking of the drug. It just really doesn't. And, you know, I think one of the best groups that has really been hard to argue is LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And a lot of people don't know this. This is a huge international organization now. They were pretty small when we first interviewed some of their members in the Union, but we interviewed some of them back. But, I mean, there are former presidents, former drug czars, former prosecutors, federal prosecutors that used to put people in prison. So from all angles of the drug war, from the judicial system to the prison system to the drug czars to the people putting people in prison, they all saw how it did more damage to societies and neighborhoods than it did helping. When somebody has a substance abuse problem, regardless of what it is, even if they're really, really addicted to crystal meth, cocaine, or heroin, it's because they have underlying issues. It's not because somebody wakes up and says, I really feel like being a crack addict today. And then what does society do? They already are dealing with usually depression, guilt, mental illness. Well, then we shame them and we give them a criminal record and we make it sure so that they can never get back into the workplace, right? And I love this thing where people are like, well, that doesn't affect me. I don't give a shit. They should be out working. No, it does affect you, because in the United States, you pay for them to go to prison. That's your tax dollars paying for them to go to prison. And me, as a father of two and someone, I don't really care if someone abuses substances as long as they don't drive and as long as they don't hurt other people. Where I want you spending the time and money is I want you going after rapists, murderers, and criminals. And they're not. This is coming from former law enforcement. I've interviewed them. I've interviewed the deputy police chief of California or of Los Angeles. I interviewed the former deputy drug czar of the UK. I've interviewed Norm Stamper, who's the former police chief of Seattle. And they'll tell you their main financial motivation is to go after drug war, because drug war, they get to do seizures of assets. When you bust a murderer or a rapist, you don't get to seize their assets. When you bust a small-time drug dealer, you get to seize their assets. And let's not trick ourselves and say, well, as long as they're going after the big drug dealers, they're not. The big drug dealers rarely get caught because they have the money to win in the court systems, and the court systems are won by money. Unless you have super huge concrete evidence, which costs millions of taxpayers' dollars and years to try to get, you don't send most of these guys to prison. You get the lowly guy that's selling a little bit to support his habit, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a major threat. You know, the major threats are pedophiles, rapists, internet, and white collar crimes. Let's look at people. You know, one of the biggest things we bring up in the Culture High is the HSBC scandal. Billions, not millions, billions of cartel dollars funneled through their bank. Nobody gets a day in jail. They get a fine of a couple $100 million, which is like paying a percentage on the billions of dollars that they laundered through. It's a slap on the wrist. It's a fucking joke. So when they say, well, we're going after the right people, no, you're not, because billions of dollars in cartel money, that has blood fucking all over it. If you just did the sheer numbers of how many people have died in the Mexican drug war, and you look at how much money was laundered through HSBC, their whole fucking organization should be shut down because they are operating with the cartel laundering money. But that's the people that suffer are the people that don't have the money to defend themselves in court. And usually it's minorities or people in impoverished neighborhoods, not true criminals. That's just the crude thing. That's why celebrities get busted with cocaine and crack and heroin all the fucking time, and they don't serve a day in jail, right? But the poor person, the young black kid that was out with his friends trying to have fun, smokes a little bit of weed, gets a racist police officer, serves time. His family doesn't have the money to defend him, or a Latino kid, because usually it's minorities. We'd like to think we're over it, but no. In the United States, it's 6-1. 6-1 of minorities getting arrested over Caucasians, even though Caucasians do drugs at the same level per 100,000. And even in places like Canada and Great Britain, where we thought we're even a bit better, we're not so polarized. Wrong. Great Britain actually prosecutes 8-1, and Canada's around the same, 5 to 6-1. Yeah. So it's still a very targeted thing that is not doing what it's set out to. And I heard this when I had Billy Corbin on. He said this line, and I liked it, where it said, the pathway to hell is built on good intentions. And I think that's what a lot of people thought this was the right way. But, we're never going to incarcerate our way out of a drug problem. That's just fact. There's never been a civilization ever since humans have walked the earth that have been drug-free. Not since the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Romans. They've all done it. So we've got to get this idea of getting drugs out of our society, because they're always going to be there. So we have to look at a way to best manage it. And that's what's starting to come in with the culture, is that we're looking at alternative methods. You've seen Colorado and Washington legalize now. You've seen Portugal decriminalize all drugs for over 12 years and having great success. And you've looked at Uruguay that's now legalizing marijuana. You've got Canada changing its laws. And you have 24 countries in Europe looking in 2016 when they go to the UN to really drastically take some alternative looks at drug policies that best help their countries. Yeah. That's the short answer there. Yeah. I only went for about 25 minutes.
That's all right. Well, the interview's done. So you guys, no, I'm kidding. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think that people have to realize that when there's so much money in prisons, there's no incentive to you have so many nonviolent criminals getting locked up, and people are doing more time for, acid than they are murders in some states. And, it's just one of those things where just like now you have unions that have incentives to make sure that people keep getting locked up, prison unions and all this stuff. And there's private prisons and, so just like if the money keeps flowing, why would they want to, stop, especially something like, these drugs that really aren't that harmful for you. It's a great reason to, like you said, lock up a minority, not a white collar person, because it's funny how we have like this perception of what we think a criminal is. Like we always think criminal, we either think some tattooed biker guy or some which you some and from back in the day, and or some some guy who looks like a gangster or whatever. And it's just like, no, some of the worst criminals are wearing a tie and a suit, but they get off the hook and they don't get any time, and it's crazy.
Honestly, since the more and more I've dug into research and listen, and I mean, like here, I am no expert. I'm a dummy on a lot of things, but to me, the more when I really start to look into things, it scares me more, because the real criminals seem to be the people that are in such higher up where they're dangling thousands of people's lives, all based on profit margins. Really at the grand scheme of things, the guy selling weed or fucking coke on the corner to people who want their product are not doing as much harm as these crooked people in politics or running countries that will pass bills strictly for their financial gain, that will cost thousands of people more money and heartache and put them into wars that have nothing to do with them and sell them on a dream that's not there. I don't know if there's anything more criminal than that. I don't know if you've heard what's really going on in the Ukraine, but I just interviewed Jen Briney, who does the Congressional Dish, and what her podcast does is goes over the bills that are getting passed through the House of Congress and explains to you what's on them, because nobody fucking knows, and nobody knows where to look to get them. And then even if you find them, the language is very difficult. So a lot of times you're like, fuck, this is boring. And I'm not doing it 100% justice, but here's the basic thing is that there's a company, I can't remember, it's IHM or something, that International Monetary Help or something like that, and they give money to different countries. And Jen was right when she started looking at the bill. She's like, well, why would they give them all this money? Well, they want to give them this money so that they open up their business laws, so they make it, they'll allow fracking in Ukraine because I guess right now they have all this shale that's untapped because the Ukraine government is getting it from Russia. And the media sold it like, oh, well, Russia's bad and they've been controlling. Well, no, Russia's been giving them a huge tax break where right now their gas prices are super cheap. So the Ukraine, but now the Americans gave the money to this, or this fund gave them the money so that now they can own the rights to the shale. They can start mining, so their American companies can go over there, which Ukraine has prevented them from doing. So now the price is going to go up for the Ukrainian people for their gas prices. Their Ukraine dollar is going to crumble so that their export starts going out the fucking window. And that their costs of living go up because now they have this when they were getting it perfectly fine from the Russians for a much cheaper price. But they sell it as like, we're doing them this huge favor. But it was fascinating to learn the real thing behind it, where I was just like, wow, what did these Ukraine people do? Like, I was thinking, if I lived in the Ukraine and I had kids and all of a sudden my gas prices are going to double and they're going to start ripping my land up and contaminating the waters and breaking up all this shale for the gas. What could you do? Because if you protest, then you look like a crazy protester, right? And then you see like the Dennis O'Leary's out there being like, get a fucking job instead of being out there and protesting. Get your fucking like. It's like, no, they're protesting because they had their rights taken away right underneath them. It was a business deal done by people above them, fucking them. And that's the thing that you're seeing with the drug wars. They sell you that it's helping you and that you need to put these people, but it's not. It's helping business interests. It's helping private prisons. It's helping drug testing companies. It's helping law enforcement. And that's why so many law enforcement are now against it, because they saw the father that smoked a little bit of weed, that then they go in, put him in jail, take his kids away, put him into a foster care system when his kids were fine. They didn't know about his habit. It was hidden up in his thing. Regardless, I don't look at it as any different as people that crush a six-pack in front of their children or drink too much wine on the weekends. I'm a big person that I don't do that. I used to own a nightclub, so my children will never see me intoxicated, ever, under any fucking circumstance, never. It's just not my thing. I see other people in my family that get a little tipsy around my kids. I never saw either of my dads tipsy, and my dad used to own a fucking nightclub. So I will never be the father figure that's drunk around not even a six-pack, slightly glossy-eyed around my kids. Fuck no. Because you want to know where addiction starts. You want to know where it happens. It's part of that early childhood development. So all those things, binge eating, you know, the way you talk to your kid. We interviewed Dr. Gabor Mate, who's a world-renowned addiction specialist. He does TED Talks. And he narrows it down where his theory or studies at 30 years in the business of studying severe addiction tend to think he's right, all comes from early childhood development, which makes sense when you look at impoverished areas and severe addiction rates in a lot of those places. And then people will say, well, what about, you know, we see it in upper class. We see rich people that have addiction problems too. Absolutely. Just because you have commercial or material goods doesn't mean that you're raising your family right. Neglect, you know, never being there, not being supportive, talking down negatively to your children can be just as detrimental as physical abuse or verbal abuse and those things as well. So you see that harming kids, where that's why kids in upper echelons get addicted to. But in those where they differ is that in the upper echelons of society, they have the money to put their kids into proper treatment, make sure they don't get a criminal record so they can go back into the workplace, and help them get out of a substance abuse problem if they have it. Whereas in impoverished areas, of course you don't have that. A lot of time you don't even have a mother or father figure. You have one or the other, right? The other one's not there. And then they don't have the money if they get a conviction. And then they have a federal record that they can't get back into the workplace because, job places are just dying to hire someone with a fucking federal offense, right? They don't look to see what it is. They just say, you have a record. It's a federal offense. Pass, right? So that's where it's working backwards. And, you know, Dr. Gabor Mate narrows this down really, really good when he looked at, and I could go on and on, I could talk the whole podcast about him, but he says this one statement in our dailies, and I don't know if it'll make it in the film or not, but he says it so eloquently, and when you really think to the meaning of what he's saying, it really fucking hooks you, where he says, substance abuse, when it comes to addiction, is not the problem. Right? Although it is a problem, it is somebody's attempt to solve a problem. So when you look at it that way, you're like, well, okay, what does he mean by that? Well, he means that nobody wants to take a substance all the time, you know, in order to feel like they can connect with the other human beings. Unfortunately, there's something wrong, and this is their crutch to try to do so. Right? So that is what it comes down to. And he says this great piece where he does speeches when he does TED Talks, and he travels all over the world. And he says he'll have 500 to 10,000 people listening, or however big his crowds are. And he says he'll ask people, what did your addiction do for you? Now, not what it did negatively. We all know. We can Google and find out what drug addiction does and specific drugs do to you negatively. But what did it do for you positively? Why did you get it? You know, and then most addicts will say, well, it allowed me a sense of peace. It allowed me a relief of pain. It allowed me to connect with the other human beings. It gave me a sense of confidence I never had before. Well, confidence, sense of peace, relief of pain, connecting with other human beings, that's something every human being is trying to accomplish, right? But if somebody can't do it because they weren't brought up right, or their brain wasn't configured right because of wrong situations in their life, or not being brought up with proper parents, or having great role models in their life, well, unfortunately, some people go to a substance in order to try to fill that gap. And unless you have compassion and someone to try to help them out of that, then criticizing them or shaming them more and putting them in a cage and telling them this is how we're going to correct you, when there isn't a fucking prison in North America where you can't get every drug that you went to jail for in the first place. Even the most maximum security prisons in the United States, you can still get fucking heroin, you can still get weed, you can still get cocaine, which if you can't even keep it out of fucking prisons, how the fuck do we ever think we're going to keep it off the streets? Right? That's when like you really sit down and do the research on this. You're like, it's fucking madness the way we think that we can control this thing.
Yeah, and another big customer of pharmaceuticals is prisons. You know, they just give them out like candy. You know, I know plenty of people who've worked in prisons, and they're like, if you want some Oxycontins, or if you want something, say something hurts, if you want some antidepressants, just start acting a little crazy, and they'll just write you them out real quick. So there's no incentive to stop this madness when everybody's profiting. You know, and that's, I think, the big problem.
That's the scary thing. That's why our first film was called The Union, the business behind getting high. Because it's like that clip of Chris Rock, you know, we wanted to have it, we couldn't keep it in the film, but he's like, the government don't give a shit about you. They sell AKs at Walmart. They don't give a fuck about you. He's like, they just don't like you doing your drugs. They like you doing their drugs. He's
Yeah.
like, that's why every night on TV you see a fucked up commercial trying to get you hooked on some legal shit.
Yeah.
Are you sad? Are you mad? Are your feet cold? Did this happen? He's like, they're gonna start naming effects until they name one that you fucking got.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're gonna be like, hey, I have that. I need that fucking pill. Right? And that was something to me when we did the union that just went. And it's so weird that it's right there in front of you, but until you're presented that you're like, no, they're all drugs. You know, they'll put this mask on and say, no, but these are medicines. No, they're still a fucking drug. If you look at the definition of what a drug is and how it alters your state of mind or your body or the neural, it's a fucking drug. They put it in a pill. It's a fucking drug, and it can cause addictions and it can be harmful. Most of them are harmful.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at them all the same, you're like, well, what's really the difference other than one goes through an FDA approval, which I've heard a lot of things about that. You could do a whole documentary on that. I mean, every drug that was originally approved by the FDA said that every drug that is now being recalled, these thousands of drugs that are being recalled every other fucking week because they kill people and hurt people and maim people, are the same drugs that were approved by them only a few years earlier. So you like to know how stringent their approving models are, but we look into that big time with the culture highs that from scientific experiment to bringing a drug on the market through all the tests and marketing and manufacturing and everything else, the average drug takes $1 billion to go through. So imagine you're 500 million in and you find out that, okay, well, 5% of people that take this, their kidney explodes, right? Let's just be, we're going out there a little bit. Kidneys don't actually explode, but just say, right? But then they'll literally do a number saying, okay, they'll do a profit analysis. And this is one of the downsides of business when it comes to medicine is they'll do a profit analysis and they'll say, okay, well, if this goes out to this many people and we only have 5% of them get a side effect, this many people would get us into a profit. And if this many people get the side effect and their kidney explodes and we have to pay out an average of this much in settlements, that's still cheaper. That's $100 million in settlements versus having to spend another $500 million because we're halfway through the drug development to rebuild from the start. So businesses, they just look at it as a sheer numbers game. They're like, well, if we only get 5% of people, which is going to be this many people, and each one is this much of a lawsuit, and said, that's $400 million less than having to start from scratch. So let's move forward. And I'm not trying to say like, yes, pharmaceutical companies also put a lot of things that help people, but that's one of the downsides of making pharmaceuticals strictly for profit. And then you also see other things like Cara Santa Maria that's coming on with you. She talks about, there's a new gonorrhea strand that's uncurable right now. It's fucking but there's not enough people. And if you create an antibody that just gets rid of it, well, then it just gets rid of the problem and there's no profit. So no pharmaceutical company wants to get in to develop something that has a very few number of people using it and can be cured with 1 or 2 treatments. That's just not profitable to spend enough money to put a drug through clinical testing trials all the way through. And there you have the downside of business involved in medicine instead of being kind of institutionalized, because then it's strictly for business. So there's a lot of things that maybe are out there that could be cured or could have better treatments than they are. But if it's a one-stop fix and it costs and there's not enough people that have the problem, then they're just not going to put the money into it.
Yeah. And Chris Rock also said in that same special, there's no money in a cure. There's no money in taking a pill and then being cured. There's money in being on a pill for the rest of your life and keep that. And that's the thing. I think that it's not like it's one big entity. Like it's not like Pfizer. It's just one big, one head honcho who's making all these bad decisions. They're just looking at numbers. It's
exactly. It's never like this conspiratorial, well, it's they, it's them, it's the Illuminati. It's just all these individual businesses. It's just like when I worked for Cintas, I worked for a sales company that I thought did a lot of very unethical things. But at the time, I was fucking starving. I needed to feed my family. So I'd go out and fucking sell and I'd hit my numbers because I had to make money to support my family. And then they have to make numbers to support their CEOs and make sure that their shareholders make money and that everybody's happy. In the grand scheme of things, you just kind of roll with the punches. It's just that if you can do anything outside of those things and And I mean, that's what we see with the drug wars. I don't ever think it's like one big they. Like, you know, Joe Rogan always calls out, who's they? Who's they?
Yeah.
And I don't agree it's they either. And that's what we try to get by with the union, is that there's all these different things, right? There's privatized prisons, there's law enforcement, there's drug companies, there's politicians that are being funded by, you know, certain parties that are directing them to do that. And then half the time it's just politicians didn't think for the longest time that the marijuana vote was something that would get them elected. So they just didn't give a fuck. So they'd have a generic answer and they would just spit off that, right? What I learned when I went to Parliament Hill and we were invited to screen the union is that a lot of times they just don't do the research. They're humans.
Well, they're too
Like,
busy.
just like their job, they're trying to get elected. They're trying to win votes. So you bring up like some topic that's very important to you in your community, but it isn't going to help them get elected. They don't give a fuck. They really don't. Right? They're just like, well, what? There's fracking here and it's hurting, what, 1,200 people? What, am I get maybe 600 of your votes because only 50% of you are going to go to the polls? Not worth my time, right? So they're not going to put in the research. And a lot of the time they just didn't have the answers. And that's what's so interesting now, was because with this access to information, we have podcasts, we have right at the fingertip, we have our phone, we have, you know, PubMed and medical reports. So like politicians get called out in a way that they've never been called out before, right? Which I always leave, like poor Obama kind of came out in this generation where everybody has a smartphone, and you know, I'm not making excuses for him, because I don't think any president really fucking matters who's in power. It seems like so controlled by the corporations these days anyway. Republican, Democrat, fucking the corporations put money into both parties. They don't give a fuck who wins. They're going to put 100 million into both, so they got you either way. But you know, it's interesting with Obama because he can get called out in a way that not even George Bush, because no one had smartphones. Like everybody has a fucking smartphone nowadays. They didn't have that with George Bush. They have it with Obama, where if he says something now that's bullshit, people can literally Google fact check him and be like, fuck you, that's so wrong, blah, blah, blah. Whereas like I look at the clip we had in the union where you had Ronald Reagan saying in an election campaign, you know, we have this new information. This new information shows that marijuana could be the most dangerous drug that is in use in our society today. He's like, I'm surprised the scientists haven't brought it to the media more than they have. Like when he said that, unless you went to the Library of Congress and started pulling medical records from these researchers, you were like, holy fuck, there's a smart man and he knows shit I don't know. And fucking I know one hippie loser down the street and I'm going to base all my judgments on that one loser. So he's right. I know it can do this thing. Whereas now you could literally be like, you know, if he was at some speech, you can be like, what study are you referring to? I'll just Google it right now and then everybody can read it and we can put it up on a big screen and we can really determine how harmful it is. You can't do that anymore. And that's a big actually chapter in the Culture High, is how the internet has evened the playing field for information, allowed people to make their own informed decisions on what's best or not, or just best for them and their family or social atmosphere.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think the internet is it's going to be a changing factor. I know every generation has said, "Oh, we're in some crazy times." I'm sure when they first built cars, or you know, they're like, "Oh, this is some crazy times," you know. But like, I really think that we're some crazy times right now, because I think, you know, as fast as technology is progressing, I mean, Moore's law, where just technology is constantly just, you know, doubling, and it's one of those things where just like we're seeing a transition of people becoming more and more aware. I have a lot of people on my show who are in alternative news. I had doctors like Gregory A. Smith, who did the movie American Addict, and all these people are getting this information out via internet, via social media. You know, social media was a big part of why the union blew up. You know, I believe
it's the only reason.
Really?
I'd like to think that I would still have a career, but like I don't know. I don't know if 10 years before, like I think like I'm a hard enough worker, I'm passionate enough. I like to still think I'd make it, but the union only became successful because of the internet. Because I'd spent all my family's private money, I'd spent fucking $250,000 from my dad, I'd borrowed all this money, and we were winning film festivals and no distributors came. We're winning awards and nobody came. And I'm like, okay, I've spent all this fucking money, and of course it leaked online, it was going on a Pirate Bay, but then people were like, hey, I really loved your film and I'd like to support it, but they couldn't find it. So we finally got some distribution deals, like Super Channel bought it right away, and we finally got a distribution deal with Phase 4, and it surprised them. They had no idea. They thought they took this film, that's the big joke between us now, is that they took the union as a favor. And then the union ended up being the most successful documentary title they've ever carried. And it's one of the only films that they're still cutting residual checks for after 3 years, because most films after 3 years, they're just illegally downloaded like crazy. Nobody makes any money on them anymore. But the union is one of the few that where some people still are like game to pay for it. They're like, you know what, I want to support Adam. I've heard him on a podcast, or I like Brett and those guys. I like what they're doing. So they go support us. Now, as you've heard me say in other interviews, that doesn't mean we're even yet. I still owe my dad $60,000. And in fact, I'm almost exactly the amount of debt because I borrowed $140,000 for the Culture High to make the Culture High something even more special. So I'm about the same. I'm $50,000 less in debt to my dad than I was in the first film, but I'm still in debt. I don't know why I keep going there. I guess I just like to still make great films. But then again, the Culture High, even with that help, the Culture High wouldn't have been possible if we didn't raise all that money on Kickstarter, which again is a crowdfunding platform done by the internet. These things just didn't exist. These outlets to get these kind of films out there just weren't there, right? And now they are. So it's amazing that, you know, the Culture High is a film that was created for the people, by the people. They wanted it. They spoke loud and clear. And there's been a lot of other followers trying to do their pot documentaries now that are jumping on the Kickstarter thing, and they think it's easy to raise $200,000, and I see them fail miserably. What they don't realize is the reason why we're successful on Kickstarter is not just because we're doing a pot documentary, is because I was actively staying in contact and doing all the social media on our Facebook page for 6 years. I tried to write every single person back that emailed us. I tried to respond as much as I could. I tried to keep constant new information and studies on there so that people that followed the page could always be getting new information and reading the newest articles out on, you know, cannabis and brain function, cannabis and lung function, cannabis and society, and all that stuff. I was always in politics. I was always trying to keep. And then now even the page has grown monumentally. Now we have this Facebook page that's 260,000 followers, you know, and then this is what inspired me to do my own podcast. And I have like, I'm connecting with all these people. Even this interview today, you reach out to me because you heard about my films and my stuff online. Then you come and say like, how do I reach out to Adam? Oh, he's on Twitter. He's on Facebook. I'll reach out to him. Boom, we connect. That stuff just wasn't fucking there 10 years ago. And it's amazing that now really, if there's something that the audience or people want, they can get it because you can put it out online and you can do it yourself.
Yeah, and you're hitting on an interesting topic that I know when you were doing your interview with London Real, Brian always looked at things as an investment, and he's like, oh, that sounds like a bad investment. But it's like I have your kind of mindset and thinking when it comes down to, but you're actually making a difference, and you're making a difference. You're happy, and you're doing something that really, like, I mean, I think it's unfortunate most people only really think about their legacy when they're closer to the finish line than they are the starting line. Like, so I mean, somebody as young as you or me who's like, okay, this podcast is an awful investment because I'm spending money in equipment, I'm spending money on bandwidth, I'm spending money on advertising it, whatever, and I'm like, but I'm happy, and like you said, it's an excuse to talk to really cool people. I mean, I'm a kid who never went to college, never, barely got through high school, and I had 2 doctors. I talked to Dr. Brzezinski on my show. I'm like, I've never even went to college, and I'm talking about, a world-known doctor, but it's like that shit can only happen today, and it's amazing that we live in these times, and but we're doing it because we're happy. I'm sure. When you're doing the union, you probably get similar questions like I do with my music or with my this podcast. People are like, "Oh, you making any money?" It's like always one of the first questions, and it's just like, dude, I don't really care about the money. If it comes, great. And most people who are successful, they do it for the right reasons. They do it because it makes them happy. Then the money comes afterwards because people appreciate it. So, I mean, is that a question you get a lot? Like, are you making any money or?
Yeah, I mean, well, everyone always tries to see the money, but I'm weird this way, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but just money doesn't motivate me at all. Like literally when someone says like, hey, Adam, like, especially now, like, because, after all these years of being the crazy guy, just dumping money, and everyone other than my immediate family and best friends were like telling me to quit and just get a day job and just get back to the real world. And I was like, but the real world? I mean, like, oh, you mean to be miserable like you? Because that's what I see as a mirror. Like, work a job I fucking hate, get fat and out of shape because I'm miserable and I'm depressed, and then go to work 5 days a week, and then what? And then work my ass off and have heart problems and die at 47 like my dad did. Like, now, not saying my dad played on the edge and had fast cars, but my dad died young. But I couldn't imagine dying at 47 and literally being like, fuck, I wish I would have went after that girl. Fuck, I wish I would have. I am a number one chaser of your passion, and money just does not motivate me. When someone approaches me now, because now my success seems to be reaching a new level, like with what's coming out. And not that I'm not driving Ferraris and shit, but just now it seems like I get to only do what I want to do. I get to make movies and I get to do my podcast. I get to do these things, and not rich, but I get to support my family and let them have the life they want with, you know, the minimal that I make. But when someone's like, Adam, we can make this money, we should partner in this, and like there's a lot of money to be made, like that, literally, it just, I start, like, my ADD kicks in. I just start looking like, oh yeah, lots of money, like because I just, what am I gonna do? Like, if I got more money, if I started making triple what I make now, all I'm gonna do with it is take my kids on more vacations. But we already get to go on lot. My stepdad's done very, very well. So he always, every second year, he flies us to some tropical place for the whole family. The whole family goes. We go to beaches. Like, I get to travel for my work. I get to go to LA, Toronto, all over the place for my work. Like, I really wouldn't do a lot different if I had a lot of money. Like, because I'm not the kind of guy, I'm not going to go buy some fancy sports car. I had those when I was younger. They're a lot of fun when they're younger, but I have kids, and like, I don't need the speeding tickets. I don't need the harassment from the police. And I just don't, I'd rather put my money into another project. Like, I can't explain what happened to me or when, but I don't, like, money is not my motivation. Otherwise, I would not be making movies. I would go into the oil industry and make fucking, like, my buddies here that make well over $200,000 a year, and they're in the oil industry. But it's funny because all of them, when they hang out with me, they're like, Adam, it's so cool that you did what you wanted. Like, they're the guys that make 5 times what I make, right? And I'm like, but they're the ones always saying to me at parties, like, Adam, it's so cool. Like, they're always like, man, where you been lately? Oh, you went to LA? Oh, you went and interviewed Snoop Dogg? Oh, you went and did this? Like, fuck, like, I went to Fort St. John. I was up in minus 40 for 2 weeks. And I was like, yeah, that fucking sucks, man. I hope it's good for you. They're like, you know, like, that. And hey, like, they don't knock it and I don't knock what they do, but I can't do that. That life wasn't for me. And like now, even now, like, it's, money is so not, like, I don't give a fuck. I have a house as long as my kids can be in the sports they want, and I can get groceries and we can pay our bills, and I can go to a movie once in a while and go out for dinner and go on a vacation a couple times a year. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
My internet is fucking shit in my house. I don't know.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I've been having lots of problems with it lately. It's been pissing me off.
Yeah, it's all right. No big deal. But yeah, no, there's actually a book called Drive, What Really Motivates People, and it's about how money, I mean, I tell people that all the time, like, if I can make just enough money to continue doing what I'm doing, and just basically like do my podcast, do my music, have enough money to go out with my girlfriend and go out to eat and enjoy a cigar and a glass of wine every once in a while, I'm happy. I don't need the $1 billion house or the newest car every time it comes out. I think we're brainwashed into believing, like, I think Graham Hancock said it once. He's like, the problem with society is that we judge people based on how nice their car is and not how many rides they've given with that car. And it's a simple quote.
Such a thing, yeah. When how nice their car is, how many rides. So true. Well, and it's so bad because you see it in, like, and this is why I've had so many pitches for reality shows, and I just don't give it, like, I literally lose interest instantly. I fucking hate reality shows. I think they're everything that's wrong with society, because you see somebody like Kim Kardashian that just sucks her boyfriend's dick and puts out a video, and now she's a celebrity. Right? Like, it just, like, I have young girls when we go to the film markets, they're like, oh, you're a producer? Well, like, I have this, like, reality show idea and I want to do it about me. And I'm like, well, what the fuck have you done? And they're like, well, I'm like a WBFF champion, and like I work out and I have fake tits. And I'm like, holy fuck, really? Like, so boring and don't give a fuck. Like, yeah, if I was single, I might want to hook up with you for a weekend. Right, but I'm sure after a weekend I'd want to strangle you, so I'd want to get rid of you. But but they see it on TV. They see young people that just, you know, live frivolously. They just get their tits done, party, and go fuck. And they got reality shows about them. So people are like, oh, well, that's what it takes. And then they see these lifestyles, and that's how they want to live. And I don't know, and I guess I'm 33 and maybe I'm getting old, but I just don't give a fuck about that shit. It just does not matter to me. Like, you know, if I was given $1 million tomorrow, I'd put trust funds away for my kids. I'd go on a trip with the family and, you know, pay off for a mortgage. And then I would, you know, put money into other films. And my wife would probably want to kill me because that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So how did, like, with, you know, you not being a pot smoker, because you would assume somebody who did a movie going all the way back and talking about how the propaganda behind weed and, you know, basically how it's a plant that can help a lot of people, but it's been suppressed or whatnot. How did you get involved in that? What motivated you to want to do a movie and get this information out? If, you know, were you just around people who smoked weed? Did you just run into some information that, like, wow, this is important?
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of, no, it was Hey, we back there?
Yeah.
So, stupid fucking. I'm trying to move position. I'm right close to our fucking thing. I don't know what's going on. Right close to our wireless thing, so I won't do that. Okay. Let's try again here. Okay, we on?
Yeah. Audio. Yeah, I see you. I mean, I see myself. I don't see you. Do you want to do audio to see if it'll help?
There we go. I should be kicking in now.
Yeah. I think there you are. Yeah.
So yeah, my motivations for the union were when I first came back from New York. I was going to film school and I was acting out there. And when I came back, everybody in BC was growing dope. Everyone, like all the guys I went to high school with, and some of them were, let's be honest, were fucking donkeys, and they had like new $60,000 trucks, they had $100,000 boats, they're looking at buying places on the lake, and I was like, what the fuck has he done since I was gone? I've only been gone for 2 years. Like, you win the fucking lottery, and people are like, oh no, he's in the union. I'm like, what do you mean the union? What fucking union is that? I want to sign up too. I'm like, no, he grows dope. And I was like, fuck, that's how he's got it. So it was so prevalent where I grew up. Like fucking everybody was growing dope and putting it away. They had at least one room in their basement and they're growing a small amount. Everybody in BC was doing it. So originally I looked at just getting into it from a financial standpoint because I was 23 at the time. My dad had just died. I inherited a strip club and stuff. And I was looking at like, well, fuck, actors are always broke. Maybe I could just like buy a house. So like that's how I knew the pyramid for the union. And I would explain, I'd be at the top of the pyramid. I'd buy the house, put it in my name, use like what I got from my little bit of inheritance. And then I would just have someone grow in the basement. And then every 3 months we'd come split it 50-50, right? And I would pay all the bills for the house or whatever. And I looked hard at it. I had realtors go look at houses and I looked at doing the whole thing. And then I'd never broken the law that way before. I mean, I'd been in fights and I'd, been speeding while I was driving and stuff like that, but I'd never like broken the law like that. So I was like, nah, I felt my dad looking down at me. And then I was like, well, why don't I take what I've learned in New York and why don't I make a movie about it? This shit's fascinating. Everybody's doing it and how they steal the power and how they set up the houses so that if they get busted, you got a fall guy. And then the guy that owns the house just like, hey, I was living in New York. I didn't know. The guy was paying me rent checks. It all looked good to me, right? So I decided to go into that. And then when we started looking at this film, it just grew into something so much bigger, right? We just started looking more and more into it. And I think that's why the union turned out so good. And again, with the culture highs, both films, we didn't have any motivation going in, like we're going to change laws and this movie is going to revolutionize the way people think. We just went into it eyes wide shut and being like, holy fuck, wow, we didn't know that. And then we started learning about like, well, why was marijuana made illegal in the first place? And then you start looking at it, you're like, well, what are the real harms? Like I've always been told it's bad for you and this and that, but like, what are they really? Let's talk to the, and then when you start interviewing like the former mayor of Seattle, Larry Campbell, who was on the RCMP drug squad, and you start hearing stuff from him, or the former police chief of Seattle, or Dr. Lester Grinspoon, who was the first Ivy League doctor to really put forth the studies that were actually done in universities and stuff instead of just being held up in the Library of Congress, then became a witness for John Lennon. And then his son got leukemia at 10 years old, and then he used that for treatment. And you're just like, holy, I remember literally during interviews, my jaws, and I'm like, I know nothing about this world because I totally thought marijuana was evil and dangerous. It was going to ruin your life. And if you smoke it once, you're going to do cocaine and become a loser. And then like literally I was just like, if I was so wrong about this, how many other things do I have no idea about my life? So then we just put what we discovered while making the union into the film. And then that's what's funny is like some of the true hippies that have been doing, they're like, I fucking knew everything in that movie. And it was like, yeah, but 95% of the population didn't, just like us. We were dummies that went into it. And then what makes it important, this is kudos to Brett, is at the end of the day, you're still making a movie. So it has to be entertaining, right? And that's why even now some people are like, well, why do you guys have like Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa and Be Real in the culture? They're supposed to be serious. Yes, absolutely. But if it's not entertaining, you're not going to retain the information. So you need those breaks. We can't just have 2 hours of just scientific information, medical information. Otherwise you get fucking bored. You need some kind of comic relief, some humor, some culture of like what it is, because those guys are all very big in the marijuana culture. So they're very, very relevant. And then of course, we had to have powerful Joe Rogan back because that just was not an option not to have him, because he's someone that's super insightful into the matter. He's done research and he has comedic timing and he knows the subject matter. So like not having him was like not an option. It just wasn't. It sucked because it took so long because his schedule was so crazy with Joe Rogan questions, everything, and him touring and the podcast and UFC. was really hard to pin him down for a while, right? And we were texting back and forth, and finally he came right to my hometown. He came to Edmonton to perform at the River Cree. And I was like, dude, why don't we just do it then? We'll do it. And here's how cool fucking Joe is. Like, crazy tour. He got in that day around 5 or 6, relaxed. He was going over a set. We went and watched the show. I took the whole crew out. We watched the show. Show got done, I think, around 9:30, 10. Then he went out to eat. He's like, dude, I'm starving. I need to eat. They went to go eat. Ate for whatever. We started 11:30, and Joe sat down with us till 1:30 at night, and then he had to catch a 7 o'clock flight.
That's right? Like, wild.
That's fucking cool, right? That somebody gives you that much time on this crazy schedule. But that's Joe. Joe is super fucking cool, really down to earth, just like he was with the first film. We were fucking nobodies from Canada that, you know, thank God we met his good friend, who's now a mutual good friend of ours, Todd McCormick. Todd McCormick said, listen, these guys are doing it for the right reasons. They're asking the right questions. You know, they've put a whole bunch of family money into it. Can you do them a favor? You know, and Joe's like, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
And I think I got asked this on my podcast yesterday with Jen, or the last week with Jen, when she's like, well, how do you get these people? And I think it comes down to those little things, that old cliche saying of pay it forward or do the right thing, or the little things that counts. Like, you know, we did an interview with Todd, and, you know, from his perspective, he said, these guys did it right. You asked the right questions. You're super professional. You're really down to earth and honest, and you were cool, and we could see the passion. So he wanted to help, right? And that's where passion in itself is a talent that doesn't oftenly get utilized. It's like then that's where I'm a passion pusher, like I said earlier, is that I encourage people to go for it, because you can't train passion. If somebody's passionate about something, even if they're rough around the edges and they don't know everything, you'll learn. I didn't know how to make a documentary and made the Union. I had no fucking clue. No idea. So I was reading self-help books and stuff on how to do this. And then there was, you know, Google was still around then, but it wasn't as good as it is now. Where literally you could be like, how do you make a documentary? And there's probably like a fucking 10-step video thing of like, but I knew, I was like, well, I don't know cameras and editing and that shit to make it look professional, so I need to hire people that are good at that. So I interviewed all kinds of people, and then, you know, met my crew, who are now Brett and Steven, two of my best dear friends. I try to work with them on everything, because I just know, we know the three of us are the fucking ultimate tripod, that I, some way or another, whether I have to beg my family or I'll do a Kickstarter or whatever, I'll bring the money, I'll bring the talent that you want, and Brett and Steven deliver the magic. You know, Brett does the writing, he does the shooting, Steven does the editing, and he helps me with this stuff, because I'm not great at organizing. I know it would seem like that, but I'm not the greatest, and that's where Steven is money, right? He puts down schedules, he makes sure things get delivered, and I need that push sometimes. So, but those little things, and even them, like now I've become best friends with them because I treated them all well from the beginning. Like, we went way over budget on the Union, spent way more money than we ever would have thought. And, you know, they put in fucking like a year and a half's worth of work that they didn't get paid for. So they just kept putting it on a backlist. So even before I paid my own personal money that I put into the film, whenever residual checks would come in, I'd split them in half. They'd go half to my dad and half to Brett and Steven. Even though I put in probably about $65,000 or $70,000 of my own money, I don't even count that. That's just never coming back to me. Like, but as we go, you know, and this is where I loop back in my long, drawn-out passion conversations here, is that it comes back to where, like, if you look at the investment, people say, well, that's a bad investment. Maybe, but I invested into my career. And now I've got to work on I Am Bruce Lee, another award-winning documentary, The Good Son, The Life of Ray Boom Boom Mancini. I have got to work with amazing world-class fighters, legends like Bruce Lee, you know, big business icons like Richard Branson, rap superstars like Snoop Dogg, Wiz Khalifa, and Be Real. Joe Rogan and me have become friends. Like, I've got to travel all over. I got to go to Europe, Spain, filming for the Culture High. I was invited to Parliament Hill. You can't buy life experiences. Absolutely. And that's where some people's minds that work that way, sadly, you can't be buried with all that Bitcoin money and stock options. You know, your coffin is only going to still look like a fucking coffin. You could spend $2 million on it and gold plate it. To me, it still just looks like a piece of fucking, just a container that's putting your dead body in there. But your life experiences, the time with your family, and leaving something for when I'm gone. The Union is going to be a piece now. It's already a cult classic. It's something that long after we're gone, already documentary styles have changed because of the Union. When Brett did the Union, we did these very quick humorous takes with archival footage, like they were called YouTube cuts, because the YouTube world was just blooming in 2004, 2005. I don't even think YouTube really got big until like 2006, 2007. But those quick cuts, because the YouTube generation was so much used to quicker videos, faster things. So Brett did these really quick cuts. When we first did the film, people were like, oh, your cuts are really weird and they're kind of fast. And now you see them in documentaries all the time, right? But, you know, those were little things like that where you're leaving an impression. And, you know, I wouldn't trade now, you know, at the time, some of the hardships we were going through and the financial stress and having to tuck my tail between my legs and ask my dad for more money and him saying, well, how much is it going to cost? I'm like, I don't know, in tears. And he's like, it's costing so much money. And I know. I was like, I just need to finish. That's the only way I can get your money back. You know, it's just, you know, it now all seems to make sense. And that's why I tell people just keep going forward and you'll find a way. And when you're hungry and you're pushing and it's hard to make a living, then when you make a little bit, it makes it where if you just make the 40, 50 grand a year and you do like the things you said you and I can say, you're like, life is really good. Like, I don't have to worry about how much my dinner is, whether it's 120 or 150 bucks, because I can afford it. Like, you don't need the Ferrari to do that. When you've grinded it out and you've gone literally paycheck to paycheck and your bank account's fucking empty, right? When you're like, oh, there's actually money in there after rent. Wow, this is awesome. I can actually go to a movie or something. Oh, my credit card actually has room on it. You appreciate those things so much more than just if it's just always big. And you know, when you see, like, if you watch Wolf on Wall Street, people say, well, that's an exaggeration. But if you look at all those stories of when people get too much too soon, the human mind can't handle it. That's why young emperors are like sadistic fucks that like torture and rape young women, because just they have everything. There's nothing. And look, you see right now when everybody's picking on poor Biebs, right? Canadian, they're like, fucking, he's a maniac. I'm like, could you imagine being 19 years old, being known anywhere that you go, having a lineup of women begging to suck your dick? You know, any toy, like when I think about that, like, oh, I'd really like this car, I'll work hard and get it. He'd just fucking call it and say, I want it chrome plated with gold rims. Like, nothing that fucks with the human psyche. You can't have everything at your fingertips like that.
Well, you need the yin and yang. I think, you know, like I live in New England and actually I was born in Portugal and I want to get into that eventually. And I came here when I was young, but that their experiment.
Really?
Yeah, so I'm also a foreigner, and you need the yin and yang. Like in New England, like I feel like we appreciate the summer because we have the winter, you know. And it's like only like I'm into nutrition. I play basketball, I lift weights, and I did some martial arts for a while, and it just, you know, when I was dieting and I was trying to get in the best shape, I always appreciated like my girlfriend's Italian. I love going out and eating at a Portuguese or Italian restaurant and eating a good meal, but I appreciated way more when I was eating really good all week and just eating shit that I knew was good for me, but I didn't really like. And then like that Friday when we went out to eat, like I appreciated it, you know. And it's like if I was eating this shit every day, I wouldn't appreciate it, you know. So that's important. You do need that, you know, the good with the bad to appreciate it. And if you are Bieber and you just get whatever you want, I mean, your mind shouldn't. It's just nobody can prepare you for that much fame, that much money, and at a young kid. I mean, you look at it. I made some mistakes when I was young. I'm sure you made plenty yourself too.
Oh, fuck. I probably made more than any of your other guests on your podcast. Yeah. Okay, I was borderline. My teachers all predicted that I'd either be in jail or I'd be riding with the Hells Angels by I was 23. So I have been in jail, but it was only for 3 hours, and I'd never go back. And yes, although I grew up around motorcycle enthusiasts, as they like to be called, in Canada, I never joined the members. I still have friends that are members, of course, but I am on the legit side of the world. So you learn more from your mistakes. And I just couldn't imagine when your mistakes are publicized globally, right? And that's like, I can't pick it, like, Bill Burr does a whole great bit on the whole Arnold thing. Have you seen that? Where it's like, we have an epidemic of gold digging whores. And he says, he's like, you know, everybody's blaming Arnold. Like, what a piece of shit. And he's like, no, don't get me wrong. It was a piece of shit thing to do. He's like, but everybody keeps referring to the maid, the maid, the maid. He's like, she knew the wife too. She used to go to dinner with her and raised her kids. He's like, to me, that's a Heisman winning trophy whore. That's what she is. Like, you know, why is it in society that, you know, it's so tough. And he goes on this whole rant about like these big fat politicians that are like, oh, it's just atrocious that he would do that. And it was like, yeah, because you have to pay for your sex. You don't know what it's like when you walk out and you have 20 young, beautiful Brazilians that are just begging to sleep with you because you're famous.
Yeah.
We can all say like, oh, that's so easy, I would never do that. But we've never had that kind of fame where everything you do is in a fucking tabloid or media. And especially now with fucking cell phones, it can take like HD fucking at least in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there's a bit of anonymity. Now you're going to a nightclub, you're fucking dancing with some girls, everybody's filming on their fucking, it'll be up on YouTube before you walk out of the bar.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's like even the Tiger Woods thing. Like, I remember when Tiger Woods got caught doing all that shit, everybody was bashing him. And I'm just like, listen, well, calm down. I'm like, I'm not saying like cheating on your wife's, you know, I'm saying that's a good thing. What I'm saying is that none of us know what it's like to turn down women everywhere you go. You're staying at a hotel, they find out there's beautiful women, you know, who want to sleep with you.
Trying to get pregnant, trying to get on your payroll, trying to get there, begging to hook, like, exactly. And there was one guy, there's one interview I saw, it was great. It was like a much smaller golfer, probably taught. But he said, he's like, you know what, all these people that are pointing the finger at Tiger Woods need to step back and hope that someone don't point some cameras there. Because he's like, I'll tell you, after being on the tour for many years, I've seen a lot of other married guys fucking around on their wives, and they better just hope these cameras don't get directed at them. They better watch the venom they're spitting on other people. He's like, and let's not forget what Tiger Woods did for the game of golf. He made it way more mainstream than it ever was, right? Because he brought it to the forefront because he was the first like minority unreal champion. And so,
well, it's easier to judge. It's easier to judge than be judged. Yeah.
And the big mistake Tiger did is he tried to pretend it didn't happen. If he just would have like David Letterman it and just come out and say, hey, I'm fucking gonna get blackmailed for my adultery, I'm just coming out, I'm apologizing, I fucked up, people forgive. But when he tried to pretend that it wasn't him, and this is where we went back to earlier in the podcast, when you try to pretend to be somebody you're not, and then it gets outed, then it shatters careers. And it's like, that's where it's like, you know, you look at Tom Cruise and these people where it's like, is he gay? Is he not? I don't know. That could be it's either the best smear campaign ever put out there or there's some truth to it, right? That's, but it's those things where if he was just like that if he just would have said like, yeah, I fucked up. I had way too much fame and money at a young age. It sucks that I did this to my family. And he apologized to his family and forgiven the next day.
Well, people are forgiving. You see it in baseball where like the athletes that come out and say that they did steroids, like David Ortiz, we forget about it and we move on. But the people who continue to like deny, like the Barry Bonds, like we're just like, that motherfucker needs to admit it.
They literally want to hang Barry Bonds, but have his name removed from baseball. Whereas if if you just would have come forward and said, yeah, I was fucking in my 40s, I needed an edge, all these young guys are fucking killing me, so I took some shit that said and hey, he's like, it still doesn't help your hand and eye coordination.
No,
you still
not at all.
hit a fucking baseball, know when a curveball's coming, okay? Like, yes, it helped me to heal faster, put it on muscle mass, but even when you put on muscle mass, you have to then adapt to your body's new size and still be able to make it move properly, right, and be functional
and reteach that muscle. Yeah,
it's I know it's always fascinating, like the way certain people, and it's such an interesting thing where, you know, when you're in the limelight, and like, thank God, that's where I'm glad I'm just like a documentary guy, and I'm like the indie guy where I'm kind of known if you follow my work, which is good because then that means you're actually watching my work or listening to my podcast or something, but you're not going to recognize me when I go down the street because I don't need that kind of stuff. I've got kids and wife, and I don't need that kind of headache.
Yeah, well, like you said earlier about like the Kardashian stuff, most people who are good actors and people appreciate them for their work, they're not trying to go out there and try to be famous. A lot of these people that have the eyes on them, they want the eyes on them. You know, they call paparazzi. They say, hey, we're going to be eating here. Come take pictures of us because they're famous for doing nothing. They're famous. Like you said, like, I mean, I'm ready to put a sex tape out just so I can get this podcast popular. I mean, it's just...
No, but you have to give it to me. You have to accidentally. It can't. That's the trick, right? Because if you just put it out, then you're a porn star. But if it accidentally leaks, but somehow you don't put a cease and desist on it and Vivid gets their hands on it, then it's okay. Because you can put a cease and desist and it's done. There's been a ton of other really big celebrities that had a sex tape threatened to go to Vivid and they fucking stifled it, right? Like, but that's the thing is you have to pretend that you don't want it to get out, but you kind of do, and then it makes you fucking famous, right? Like, you're telling me Paris Hilton with her money couldn't fucking stifle that thing? Not a chance, right? You could threaten like a fucking $30 million lawsuit, nobody's going to touch it. So it's just that's exactly but you need to go for the right reasons, and that's, you know, coming back to the money. Like, I think if you're a money chaser, I think you're alone and empty. I mean, I worked in New York. I worked for the investment bankers and stuff that I don't know, man. They were in these trophy wife relation. They seemed fucking miserable.
And they usually are.
They had these amazing places, and they had all the money. And I don't know. Most people I've met with my stepfather has to be about the only guy that I've met that's done really, really well in the corporate world, because he generally loves his job. And is just not a douchebag. Like, he's so caring. And like my stepdad's the kind of guy, give you an example, is he has, and I only refer to him as my stepdad. I mean, my mom got remarried when I was 2, so I essentially have 2 amazing fathers. But just because some people have maybe heard me say, my biological father passed when he was 47. My stepdad is still alive, and I love him to death. But my stepdad has one Rolex, and the Rolex was given to him as a gift. And he didn't want it because he's like, I hate having these kind of flashy. He tried to give it back to his good friend. He's like, I can't accept, like, I don't like wearing gaudy, like flashy. And his friend is like, I already got it sized to you. It's way, like, it's got your engravings on the bottom. My dad's like, so, and my dad never wears it. He like keeps it in this thing. He rarely wears it. Maybe a business meeting where the guy that got it for him is going to be there, so that he's like, oh, there I am wearing my watch. Yeah. Like, he doesn't like it. And then my dad, like I said, he's going to retire, and he is an old time greaser from the 70s. So both my dads were, they love cars. So my dad's been spoiling himself with nice cars the last couple of years. Up until that, he just drove, like, he had a Passat, even as the vice president of his. But now he just got him, like, he usually just gets a new lease. He has a Maserati.
Nice.
But he deliberately doesn't drive it to work. He only drives it on weekends. He gets my mom to drive it, and he drives the truck. And then if he does have to take it to work, he parks it on the furthest parking lot, not in his parking stall, and he gives up his parking stall because he hates other people to see or to think that that's the kind of image that my dad's like, oh, he's the president, he's got a Maserati. Like, my dad hates that shit. And it's so refreshing to see when we have, like, house parties and stuff, and, you know, you'll have not good friends, but you'll have, like, maybe business associates come over, and they'll be like, oh, well, like, I'm blah, 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 what do you do? And my dad will just be like, oh, I work for Cameron. Like, oh, really? Like, what's your position? My dad's like, oh, I'm in sales, even though he's the president, right? He's like, but he just doesn't like to say that. Or if someone, I remember one time I was so proud of my dad when one time someone's really trying to get to, like, what his financials were, right? And he's like, oh, well, how much is in your 401k or this? My dad's like, enough. He's like, well, no, you know, because, you know, there's good investments and bad. Like, I'm trying to get a sense, like, what are you doing? My dad's like, enough. I don't talk about that shit, right? Like, I don't measure my wealth and conversations by saying I have this or I have that. Like, and me and my dad have such great conversations. We were hanging out at the last family function, and he was saying, he's like, Adam, he's like, if me and your mom raised you and your brother to measure yourself by the status you held or the materials that you had or the money that you made, then we failed, and I apologize, because that's not how we meant to raise you. And I was just like, fuck, I love you even more. Like, that's just not, and that's, I guess maybe that's where I get it. It's just that stuff is so, and that's why when I see people doing it at parties, I just feel that they're lost, right? Like, I see a party and someone's just trying to be like, oh, well, you know, I did this, and I just bought myself this and this hot tub. And they got to tell you the price of everything. Wow, we got this $15,000 hot tub, we got this $45,000 truck. And I'm just like, why couldn't you just say you got the hot tub and a truck? Like, I don't get why you got to put the price on there. Like, that just seems like it's so weak to me. It just seems like you're lost and you're looking for attention. I don't even get mad at them. I just feel sorry. I'm like, if that's all in your life is just numbers in a computer that register value for your bubbling tub and your vehicle with tires on it, I'm sorry, but you're going to be very, very, very sad at the end of the day. Absolutely. Because that's going to, and it just doesn't drive me.
I have a lot of older friends, and it's the same thing. Like, the one thing I love about older people is that, you know, you meet people who just, they don't give a shit about having the nicest car, the biggest house. I mean, usually they buy the big house when they're young, and then they're trying to sell it when they're older, you know, and it just, like, they start looking at things like, you know, they start caring more about what they're going to leave behind, the lessons that they can you know, teach their grandkids or the people around them, and they start putting things in perspective. And I think that's so important, because you can always make more money, you can't make more time. And I think it's important to, you know, to live your life. We have a family-owned construction company, and same thing. Like, I hate the business world. I hate I hate dealing with just cutthroat assholes. And it's like, I meet all these people who have multi-million-dollar you know, construction companies that we work with, and they're all miserable. They're trying to to like they're. And it's funny, like, because sometimes it seems like the wealthier you are, the cheaper you are, and the more
yeah.
And it's like, well,
that's when they became wealthy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's like what was that documentary Park Ave? Like it was all about Park Avenue and all these wealthy people that live there, and like the bus boy was talking about how cheap they all are, and usually the bigger the name, the wealthier they are, the less they tipped, if they even tipped, and all this other stuff. And I'm just, and you're right. That's how you got wealthy, and it's just like so. And it's funny how we look at addiction, because we always look at addiction as substance like marijuana or alcohol, but money is a fucking addiction. Money is an addiction. You keep trying to fill this emptiness that you can never fulfill, and then just like any coke addict or heroin addict, you get.
I would argue that money is the worst addiction, not just because of your pursuit to try to get it, but the damage that people are willing to do to society and to human beings in order to achieve maximum profits. There is no bigger destruction than destroying the environment the way we are, the way that we go into societies in other impoverished countries and just fuck them over. And then we sell it as like, well, we're supplying jobs for them. No, you're supplying jack shit jobs that are barely better than they are, instead of going in there and saying, you know what? Maybe instead of making, and I don't know the fucking numbers, but say instead of making $10 million, we could make $5 million profit, but we could put 5 back into this environment and economy and really establish a great community here. No business does that, because it's not how a corporation is designed. A corporation is designed to make the maximum amount of profits for his shareholders at all costs. I would argue that is the worst addiction on the fucking planet, because you've seen people get murdered, people get put in prisons, environments get totally fucked up. We just disregard human life all the time when it comes to profits. It is probably the worst. And I don't know, when these people that are sitting up and these huge, like the Koch brothers and everybody else, like, how much fucking money do you need? There's nothing on this planet you can't buy already. What do you need? What is the game? What is it for you at that point?
Where's the finish line? Where's the finish line?
I just don't get it. Like, I would, and it's funny because Dr. Gabor Mate actually does. There's a bit on the internet of him talking about that. He's like, when we look at addiction, right, and we sell it on like, well, it's so bad for the environment and our society and harms. He's like, well, look at most corporations. They're damaging the environment. They're fucking it up so our children can't leave there. They're sucking every last bone out of it, putting our children in debt with college tuitions and everything else. And we blame somebody else that has a substance abuse problem, like, because he's really fucking up the environment, right? This one guy that chooses to use a drug that he prefers and does his own, uses it in the privacy of his own home, and he's a detriment to society. But these corporations, and you've heard Joe Rogan talk about this too, and you'll get these people that are like, middle America that aren't making tons, and they'll argue for that because they'll think maybe one day they're like, no, that's good, like hoping that maybe one day they're on the other end of like receiving, where they're like, no, it's good, it helps economy and this. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Like, look, in a lot of these businesses, like, they're all going overseas. They're not helping their own economy. They sell it so good. The more I look into politics and really understand how big business works, the scarier and scarier it looks for me. I just have less and less faith in humanity, because the way a corporation is designed, there's the great documentary, The Corporation, that shows that a corporation acts as a living thing, although it cannot be prosecuted as a living thing. And if you were to use a corporation's actions, if you were to examine them the way a psychiatrist would examine a human, the way they disregard life for profit incentives, they would be a psychopath every fucking time. They are a clinically insane psychopath. Yet those are the things running our countries. Awesome.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to have somebody from the corporation next month, because they're going to be doing their anniversary tour and stuff like that, and promoting it again.
How many years is it the anniversary for that? 10 years?
I think 10 years, yeah. And
because it came out a few years before the union, and we're at 7 for us. So it's, the corporation was a game changer. It was it was like another Canadian doc.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It was, and it was awesome because I think what people didn't, it helped you realize that the unfair game they play. Like, you have the best psychologists, the best scientists. They know how to what colors, what themes, what fonts. Everything is a statistic, and they're literally brainwashing you. And I know that some people say, "Oh, we're being brainwashed," and it just sounds like Alex Jones being crazy. But they really are being brainwashed. I mean, not to the level where they're using some they're doing it because of marketing. I mean, it's all about the whole PR thing. I mean, marketing came from Edward Bernays, who wrote the book Propaganda and came up with public relations and was the nephew of Sigmund Freud and understood how to manipulate people. And
oh, dude, I trained for a sales background, and even in sales, we did this thing called ECIR: empathize, clarify, isolate, resolve, right? And they teach you this in the sales techniques that we had for Cintas, but they told you can apply these in your everyday life. And here's how they gave us the example in training, is they said, listen, when the next time your wife bitches and says, hey, you didn't take out the garbage and blah, 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 empathize. Babe, you're totally right. I'm so sorry. I should have taken out the garbage. I apologize. But now I'm going to clarify what the issue is, right? And this is just coming back to human instincts, right? But babe, is me taking out the garbage the only thing that has you upset? Because if it is, I have no problem taking it out. But is there anything else bothering you, right? So then she's going to be like, well, you haven't massaged me lately. You haven't been attention, been busy with the kids, right? So now I'm going to isolate the problem. Be like, okay, babe. So if I were to make sure I spend more time with you and the kids, give you a back rub tonight, and take the garbage out, now I'm going to make the resolve. Can we have sex tonight? Right? And it works where they teach you in your home life where if you follow that basic plans with humans, it'll work no matter whether you're selling, whether you're dealing with stuff, because people right away, like when someone's hostile, empathize with them and you take it down right away, right? So when you try to refute, then that's when boom, you go so if you empathize, right? And then a lot of the times when we're blowing somebody off in a sales thing or in a conversation, it's because we're not really listening, we're not getting to the heart of the problem. So they'll just blow you off, and that's why you're going to clarify, because they'll just try to say, oh, I'm not interested, I can't afford it, right? And then you break it down and be like, well, actually I can save you money, blah, 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 blah. So it's fascinating when you learn, like, of course, and then if you're going to the best of the best that are dumping millions of dollars into this, they fucking target that perfectly. And that's where you see, and you can relate that totally back to the marijuana thing, is they sold you on, we have to protect the children. And what about the children, right? And then that's where people are like, yeah, well, I don't want my children fucking smoking weed. Of course not. Nobody wants their kids doing drugs. I hope my daughter never smokes cigarettes, never smokes weed, never drinks alcohol, never drinks caffeine, and eats only healthy. Well, you know what? We've already fucked up because she's been introduced to candy and pop, so she's not going to be eating healthy for the rest of her life. So she's already got an addiction there she's going to have to beat. And when I say addiction, I'm being legit. For your listeners, go Google what sugar does to the brain. It makes you addicted. That's why when you mentioned earlier about eating clean, the first 2 weeks you try to eat clean, how fucking hard is it?
Physical withdrawals.
So fucking hard, because you literally have withdrawals mentally and physically. You want that shitty food. You want that pizza. You want that big Coca-Cola with ice in it. You want all those pastries and shit. Your body, I literally, until I just found out about this recently, I was like, fuck, why do I keep caving in and having this bad food? Right? Like, I'm trying to myself. I used to be a men's health and fitness model. I certainly don't look like that now. Call myself the chubby fat dad. But, and I'm like, why was I so good in New York? It used to be so easy for me. I did it for so long, and now I keep caving all the time. Like, I went to a movie with my daughter yesterday. We went to go Rio, and then I had a pop, and I had some popcorn and some candy. I'm like, I had it all. Because right now I'm addicted, but then I'll go through spurts where if I really push myself after 2 weeks, then I don't want it.
Yeah.
Then it's not in my system anymore, because now I've got over the mental and physical cravings of the shitty food that is pushed on by the food corporations of our society. Sugar is artificially put into 80% of the foods we eat today so that you will become addicted to it. It's in things that you wouldn't even think of, like sandwich meats, sausages, bread. It's in fucking everything so that you want it.
Milk has tons of sugar. Yeah.
Oh, milk tastes so good. I love it. It's so bad for you. I mean, dairy is bad for you. Sugar is bad for you.
Dude, look at just how many foods are banned from Europe. Like it's insane. Like my parents, being born in Portugal, and like they still like think that they're in little Portugal, so they have like goats and chickens in the backyard, and they're farmers, and they make wine, and I actually made wine for the first time this past year, and like and it's cool because it's like I'm like, well, how does my dad wake up every day early? He drinks every day. He has a glass of wine with his dinner. He ends up having a shot of moonshine. And I'm like, this motherfucker has more energy than me, and it's like the food they're taking in is just better quality. You know, the chickens in the backyard, the eggs, they grow every. I mean, if the world ended today, most of us are fucked because we wouldn't be able to survive on an island. My parents would be fine. These old school farmers, like, they could grow stuff. They grew.
I'd be so fucked. I can't hunt. I can't cook. I can't fix shit. I fucking make movies. I'd be the first one being like, I'll be your enforcer and protect you. You cook the shit. I'll. But even that, like, I used to box so I can hold my own, but now these new MMA guys with jiu-jitsu would fuck me up. I'd have to bite or something like that.
Yo, who won last night? Jones? Did Jones win last night? He did, right?
Yeah. He dissected Glover Teixeira, man. It was just, honestly, I said it last night, and I had to debate a few people on Twitter when I said, if he isn't already, he's quickly becoming, John Jones is the Muhammad Ali of the sport.
He's a freak athlete.
Well, he barely got by Gustafsson. I was like, listen, Gustafsson is a beast, and I'm not taking anything away from him. That was one hell of a fight. But Gustafsson wasn't the lightweight heavyweight champ at 23 and didn't have 11 title defenses by the time he's 26. 23 is the youngest light heavyweight champ ever right now in UFC, and 11 title defenses puts him only behind GSP and Anderson Silva. But here's where John Jones is bigger, and I, being Canadian, I fucking would almost get the GSP tattoo. Okay, I fucking love him.
Me too. Yeah.
Never been a big Anderson Silva fan, but I can't take away how good of a fighter he was. But here's where John is different than them. John, literally, Glover Teixeira's whole game plan was to dirty box John, was to cut off his movement, get him up against the cage, and utilize his power. John pulled himself right into the cage with him and outdid his own game plan on him. Right? That's where only Muhammad Ali and John Jones do that. Like, you've never seen Anderson Silva get into a wrestling match just to prove he could out-wrestle somebody. No fucking way. He doesn't want to get on his back. And same with GSP. He knows if a guy's even as good as him as a striker, even though GSP might be a little better, he's going to take him down at first so that he gets him thinking about the takedown defense, right? He's going to ruin him. Whereas John Jones, he was literally, at the end, he was just trying shit. He's like, and people were like, what is he doing? Like, he was kind of pulling Glover in, and he was just palming Glover's head and just doing all this stuff, and then just went into the corners and then just was fucking him up with elbows. And then at one time, Glover tried to grab him, and actually John in the first round dislocated his shoulder a little bit because John just grabbed his shoulder. He's like, hey, I got you kind of a vulnerable position, and just lifted his shoulder right up, right? So it literally was just a dissecting. He didn't finish Glover because Glover's a fucking warrior. But even Glover at the end of the fight was just like, I had no idea how good this guy was. He fucking beat me up. Like, he just is so elusive and just it gets you from all angles. And that's where I support my statement saying that he is quickly becoming, because if you want to wrestle, like guys that thought that they were going to take him to the mat, he goes to the mat with them. And you're like, oh my God, we didn't think he would wrestle with them. Like, he does it just to see if he can do it. Like, and that's insane. That's where he differs from GSP or Anderson Silva.
I love GSP just because he's he's the most likable dude. Not even just in MMA. I think in the world he might be one of the most likable dudes.
Oh, he's exactly what that sport needed. And actually, I'm usually a big Dana White fan, but I was really pissed after the Hendricks fight that he said he owes it to the fans to come back and fight him. And I was like, dude, he doesn't owe you jack shit. I was like, at the time, the generation that GSP was coming up was when you were trying to legitimize this sport, and you couldn't have had a better poster child than GSP that was classy, honorable with his fighters, spoke well, was super humble. Like, if as great as Anderson Silva was, with his attitude and his cockiness, he would have not have brought the sport the way GSP did, or someone like a Nick Diaz or a Matt Hughes even. Matt Hughes came off really arrogant early on in his career, right? So I was like, he doesn't owe you a fucking thing. If anything, I would question whether UFC would be as big as it is if you didn't have the poster boy GSP that is the most humble individual. I've met GSP, fucking just as humble in his interview. He is so humble. He doesn't like, it's hard to imagine that he's a fighter if you didn't watch him, because he's non-aggressive. Like, he does not want to fight in person. Like, even some people will go fucking kill you. And he's like, yeah, he probably could. But he's like, nice to meet you.
He let Rogan teach him a fucking back heel kick. I mean, and
dude, he has no ego. He's just so the best thing that ever happened to UFC was GSP.
Well, especially at that time when like a lot of people, you know, obviously UFC fans, you don't have to sell them on MMA, but a lot of boxing fans and people who liked other sports are like, oh, it's violent, it's a bunch of arrogant animals. So now if they watch a GSP fight and they have a guy who apologizes when you know, to the fans when he thinks he didn't give them a good enough show.
To them, yeah, and then not only that, always when they say, like, you look at all of his fights, GSP, what do you think about your performance? And he's like, I got to give it up to him. He's young. Wait till he comes back. He's going to be 10 times as worse. He beat me now. He's like, I wouldn't want to fight him again, right? He said that about Thiago Alves, said that about Carlos Condit. He said about all these guys where, you know, because he knew when Matt Hughes did that to him, it made him 10 times the fighter, right? When he lost to Matt Hughes, it was a mental thing. He could have beat him. And then GSP came back and was 10 times the fighter. And you can't, like you're saying exactly, at a time when the whole world was looking at this as not a real sport, but they were trying to make it a legitimate sport and make it sanctioned and get it on regular sports networks, he was the poster child. Because, you know, a lot of the guys that are even around now that I love to watch them fight, they're not as good, right? They wouldn't be as lovable as GSP. They're not as well spoken. They're not as polite. They're not as endearing. They're not as non-threatening. It just wouldn't have been. So they literally, a perfect synergy happened for them. And it's funny, being someone who used to box, you know, I was an amateur pro. I find it so funny when boxers diss them. They're just fucking just gladiators in the ring. I'm like, really? Really, you guys are going to go there? People said the same thing about boxing for the last 50 years. Like, you guys can't open your mind to just, and as a boxer, I'll tell you, like, yeah, when I was younger, growing up in Canada, we don't have, like, there was rarely ever stabbings or shootings. Usually it was like a house party. Two guys wanted to fucking throw down. Sure, let's go outside. Everybody piles outside to watch the fight. And then if one guy really starts getting a licking too bad, fucking usually the crowd would just split it up, right? Yeah. It's very common. So when I was younger, and boxers, we cleaned house. We were the MMA guys back in the day, right? Because in Canada, wrestling isn't as big in the United States. So I never had to come. I used to fight a lot when I was younger. I never had to come a lot of wrestlers. They probably would have fucked me up. But you know, like, and nowadays, like, you have the jiu-jitsu, you have everything else. Like, I just think it's the more complete game. Like, yeah, at the time, hands were 90% of battles, right? And yeah, you'd get in tight. And I knew some basic chokes from when I worked the bar and submissions and stuff like that. I knew some basic ones back in the day. I choked guys out all the time when I got into street fights because it saved my hands, but not to the level now. So even me, I just respected, we're like, fuck, I wish I would have trained all that so I could just have a more full game, because as a boxer, if you just shot in as a wrestler and had me on my back, I'm fucked.
Well, the thing I think I love about MMA is the fact that you're literally putting two people in a ring and saying, you choose what you think is the best option to defend yourself. You know, and it's like, so you could choose anything. If you want to focus on striking, if you want to focus on jiu-jitsu, you know, Muay Thai, whatever it is, like, you're basically saying, let's find out what's the best way of defending yourself if you had two animals going at it, and you could use any technique possible. And I think that that's the thing. Like, and don't get me wrong, like, I think boxing, there's things that boxers are good at that, you know, obviously if you just had a boxing match, boxer would beat the fuck out of a lot of these MMA guys because they throw way more punches. You know, they're really good with
movements better.
Yeah, their footwork. I mean, it just, so it's different. Like, but then obviously you put a boxer in the ring, and you know they're not used to defending the takedowns and stuff like that. So,
fuck, I'd be so lost. I watched that stuff. I went to, because Kishido MMA is in Kelowna, right, and that's where Rory McDonald's from, and Michael Hill, who was on The Ultimate Fighter, and Sarah, who was just on the women's one, all came from this small gym in Kelowna, right? They have a lot of badass fighters there. So I've gone in, and I know David Lee through the bar. Kelowna's a small town, it's 100,000 people, so they knew who I was, and I know they're like, whoa, Scorgie's in here. They're like, Adam, you just got to get you sign this release so we know where to take the body. And they're like, you know, and I did a little bit of stand-up to warm up and hit the pads and stuff. And then they're like, okay, do you want to do that kind of stuff? I'm like, no, I want to go to the ground. They're like, oh, really? You want to do that? I'm like, yeah, because I already know hands decently. Like, I mean, I haven't competed for years. So, yes, am I off? Yeah, fuck. I haven't been practicing martial arts on a regular basis for a long time. But, you know, so I went to the ground, and they put me with an experienced guy, but not one of their best. And he was so mellow with me. I mean, fuck, I felt like a child rolling with a man, right? Like, I'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of inside control. Oh, no, I'm back in full mount, right? Like, one move, and then I'd be like, oh, I'm kind of getting position. Oh, no, tap, tap, tap,
yeah,
tap.
Yeah.
Like, and then there was one move, and the guy was really cool that I rolled with, because he didn't try to, like, beat me up so bad that I didn't, but, like, he let me know whenever I was, like, getting a little too much. I'm like, oh, I might actually be able to kind of get behind, like, I might be able to get him an arm bar. Then he'd flip me over and put me in a submission or whatever, right? But he let me get a little bit, so I feel like I was making progress. But I remember he got me in like a fucking half triangle, And I kind of defended because just from watching UFC, I was like, okay, answer the telephone, right? So you got your arm in there to protect. So I'm like this, when the legs are squeezing, and then, but I didn't realize, like, and he kind of let me go. What's that? What's up, sweetie? Sorry, my daughter's just coming.
That's all right. Just hi.
Take Spot for a walk as I'm cleaning my room.
Okay, I'll take her for a walk in a little bit. Sorry, this is my daughter coming.
That's all right.
I gotta take the dog for a walk.
This shit's
But
unedited.
anyway, I put my arm in the telephone and he squeezed the shit, and he had really thick legs. I remember that, and I'm blocking, and I don't know if I got out on my own or if he kind of let me go and I got out, but I felt like I got. But as soon as I got out, I was so fucking dizzy because he cut the blood off on this side. Like, and I've been in like well over, not to exaggerate, probably 65 street fights. Like, I used to fight a lot when I was younger. It was dumb. It was my kind of outlet when I was younger. But
well, you're from Canada, boxing. I mean, and
yeah,
hockey,
like,
and
it was just normal to fight. Like, and it was like, you know, and I was the guy that didn't drink or didn't like at house parties. So like literally when the drunk assholes had looked to pick on one of my buddies, I was the guy that always stepped in, right? Or a lot of the time being a small town too, people just be like, oh, you're the boxer, right? Fuck, so you think you're tough? Yeah. I'm like, I think I'm tough. I can hold my own. They're like, fuck, you want to fucking go? And I'm like, okay. Right. And then that's where, and people used to think I was so mean in high school because right when a guy's doing that, he's like taking off his shirt. I just fucking TO on him, knock him out. Right. And they'd be like, what? He wasn't. I'm like, he came up to me and said, do I want to fight? And then he says he's going to kick my fucking ass. Like, what am I supposed to ask him if he's ready 3 times? We're not here in a fucking pro fight. Like, we're drinking, like, you're drinking, like, be sober and come at me properly then. I'm not going to give you, like, are you ready now? Are you ready now? Because I'm going to throw a punch. Are you ready?
Well, the thing is, too, is like when you meet people who train, you realize how modest they are. Usually it's the ones who have some insecurities that they're trying to convince themselves and everybody else that they're tough. And they're the ones who usually like pick a fight. Like the people who know they can kick somebody's ass. I mean, I was trained with black belts, some of the nicest people you ever meet, and they'll be the first one to walk away from a fight, you know. And it's usually the guy who has little man syndrome, or the guy who you know, wants to prove to everybody that he's tough, or you know, even at the gym, like the guy who benches, you know, 450, and he goes out to the bar, and if you bump into him, that now all of a sudden he feels like he has to show that he's tough. Don't, you know, hey, watch where you're going, you know.
Yeah,
it's like if you're
those are my favorite guys to knock out, were the assholes that were like out there picking on someone.
Yeah. And
you could step in and just be like, no, I'll go in. And they're like, no, my beef's not with you. I was like, no, it is, because you tried to fight my friend, and he's a little guy, so now your beef is with me, right? So let's make it more a fair fight. Those are my favorite. Isn't
it similar to like you know, a giant pit bull who's like the friendliest dog ever? Then you see this little chihuahua that's trying to convince everybody it's tough. I mean, that's like what I think. I'm like, dude, you have some you're like a chihuahua. You have the body of a pit bull and the mind of a chihuahua, and you're trying to convince everybody that, you know, you're tough or whatnot. And it's just like, dude, I'm too old for that shit. I just want to go out and have a good time.
You don't fucking win. Like, your hand's beat up, and you can throw your shoulder out, and then you win. Then you get these guys that fucking pick a fight with you, you knock them out, and then they press charges.
Oh my
right?
God,
and it's like, dude, you fucking fought. But now, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You have to spend legal money defending yourself, proving that it was in self-defense. And I remember, and that wasn't around as much when I was younger. I remember a good story. I was 18 working the door for my dad because I was underage, because drinking age was 19 in British Columbia. And it was my buddy's birthday, and they were out wasted, and they were underage. And some older guys that we knew from high school, they were kind of known as like the badasses. They were like 24. They had graduated. This was our senior year. And my dad used to have me work at the door, and it was allowed by the liquor inspector because I was out front, because I would know the minors coming in, and I wasn't in the red zone of serving liquor. So I pull my friends in the bar to save a fight. I'm like, because they're both little. They were like 120 pounds in high school. They would have murdered. And these are all the big gym guys, right? And like, look. So I pull them out, and then they're drunk, so they don't realize why they got pulled in. So they come back out. Like, so then the guys start chirping them, right? And then I go to push him back inside again. And the one guy, I remember, he was 24, and him and his brothers were known as like bad dudes from Rutland. There's the rowdy school, the tough part of town. And I didn't even see him, but he comes right in my head, and he's like, who the fuck are you? Because I was trying to defuse the fight, and he starts tapping his forehead against my forehead. And if I would have known who he was, because Kelowna was small enough that you had like reputations and stuff, if I knew who he was, if I would have known his name, I would have been way too scared to fight him, right? But I was 18. This was when I was peak. I just finished boxing a few years earlier. I was working out. I was in great shape. I knew I had great hands. So I'm like, I look, and I'm like, he was bigger than me, but I was like, he's been drinking. He ain't going to be ready. So like I turn around, he's like, let's rock and roll, bitch. And I fucking teed up on him like, whack, whack, whack. I did a 1, 2, 3, boom, had him down on the pavement. And then I was on top of him just feeding him. And then my own doormen are pulling me off, and I'm trying to kick him. At this point, I'm mad, right? And I was only 18. I was still young and dumb. So I'm trying to lay, and I broke his jaw and fractured his orbital bone, right, with all like 3 shots. And then years later, I saw him like 5 years ago. He's got like 3 daughters now because Kelowna's small. And we went out and he came up to me in the mall and he's like, hey man, he's like, I just want to thank you for that night that you beat me up. And I was like, you want to thank me? He's like, I have to say, Adam, he's like, you put me in my place. I was really cocky, arrogant guy. I was rude as hell to my old lady. I just thought I was invincible and that no one could fuck with me and I could just fucking do whatever I wanted. And then some 18-year-old kid laid a fucking whooping on me. He was like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't realize it then, of course. I had an ego for a long time. And because they were older, they threatened to get guys after me. But because of who my dad rode motorcycles with, that got squashed very quickly, right? Where it was like, oh, you want to threaten and get other people involved instead of just a one-on-one? And then my dad made some calls and it was done. But it was, yeah, it was interesting to hear that perspective that he actually is like, it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It really humbled me because I learned that, you know, hey, fuck, I'm not invincible and I'm not the biggest, baddest guy. And some 18-year-old fucking laid a licking on me. And I was like, wow, it was a weird thing. I was like, well, you're welcome, I guess. Like, good for you.
It's weird where we get life lessons. It's so crazy how like certain things in our childhood, we stay with us forever. And at the time we don't realize it's molding who we become, but it does,
totally.
You know? Yeah,
totally. It's the same. And it's so weird too. And that's where like the whole gun thing in the States scares me more. Cause like I look at a lesson like that. Like I see him now in Kelowna. I see him quite a bit. It's small when I go back to visit, you know, and neither of us like, yeah, okay, you got a broken orbital bone and a broken jaw. I've had those too, not orbital bone, but I've had my jaw. You live through those. They suck for 6 to 8 weeks. You lose some weight. So if you're trying to cut weight, it's not bad. But, you know, you live to fight another day. It's not a big issue. Whereas when you, like, people are so quick to use guns and knives nowadays, like, then it's like you killing somebody. And I know someone could die from a punch. They can hit their head on the concrete and stuff too. Absolutely, that can happen.
But less likely. Less likely.
Yeah. It you know, it doesn't happen a lot. So it's I like the old days of that. And I've, you know, like Joe's talked about this on his podcast. I think that, you know, it's almost why all kids should get into all males should get into some form of martial arts, because it's kind of like our test to manhood. In North American culture, we don't have anything. We become 18, we get in these adult bodies, we can now drink, and well, in Alberta, in some parts of Canada, you can drink at 18, 19, in the States, I guess 21. But you know, you've got this physical body that's now in like semi-adult form, you're getting stronger, your hormones are kicking in, your sex drive's through the roof. You know, but you don't have this like kind of like test of manhood. And that's where martial arts is really good at humbling that, because, you know, you took martial arts and like, I mean, I've been licked in the ring, and I was licked when I first started. And that's why I wanted to go do jiu-jitsu. I was just like, fuck, I just want to experience like, you know, some younger kid that can just pretzel me and like end my life if he wanted to, right? Like I just wanted to experience what that, you know, to make me a better person, because it's better when you know that you have that humility factor, that there's always someone tougher and always someone, you know, I think it's so good for young males to have that. It's kind of, Eddie Bravo talked about this one where he said jiu-jitsu is like the douchebag eliminator, because like these douchebags will fucking fuck up anyone, and you get like the 17-year-old like 150 pounder to just fucking, you know, submit him 5 times within a minute, and the guy's just fucking. Now a good person that's willing to work on himself will just take that as like, fuck, I want to get good at this, I want to be able to defend that shit, right? Or someone that's got you know, an insecurity problem or an ego issue, they won't like that. That they got in the fuck that stupid fucking sport, and fucking if we were fighting for real, I would fucking kill them, right? Whereas it's so much, and boxing was that for me. Thank God I went into it. You know, gave me confidence in my abilities. It also taught me the good thing with like martial arts and the physical aspect is showing that you can push yourself way further than you think. Because I used to quit all the time and just be like, oh, it's hard, I quit. Oh, it's hard, I quit. But I had the best boxing coach who's a great family friend that I remember in the ring, if you got tired and put your hands down, he's like, oh, perfect, target practice, tee up, boom, boom, boom. I was like, whoa, no more putting my hands down. Like, and then you realize your body defends itself. You're like, fuck, I guess I'm tired, but I still can throw some punches back. I still can defend myself. That's just your mind wanting to quit. And I can't say how good that has been for me when I see those life lessons coming in now in my life as a filmmaker, and the struggles of, you know, making a marriage work and being a good father and trying to be successful as a filmmaker and trying to pay my bills. Or like so many times you just want to quit, and this is too fucking hard, and this is it. Yeah. But like those lessons I learned through boxing, through, you know, form of mixed martial art, that you can push further. There is a way out, that it's not even in defeat or in your worst thing, it's not the end of the day, right? Things will continue.
Well, Yeah, I think that's why sports are important. You get a lot of life lessons from them. You know, you learn that working hard pays off. You learn that you know, that losing sucks. You know, and you learn all those life lessons. So that's I think that's why when sports get cut, it's always like, it's so sad because it's like you might that kid might learn lessons from playing that sport, and you learn how to communicate with other kids. You learn how to you know, if you have a shitty opinion,
you learn it's hugely important for how kids communicate with each other, because free play is so gone compared to when we grew up. I mean, I don't know how old are you?
I'm 29. Yeah,
29. So you're around I'm 30, turning 34, but getting old. But like, you know, like I know when I was younger, and I don't know if it's the same for you, like literally I used to leave the house at 9 a.m. and I didn't come home till 5, sometimes 7. I get grounded for coming home too late, like gone.
Yeah.
Out of my parents' view, fucking down neighborhoods away. Like I look at the distances I used to go, because my old neighborhood's not far from where I just moved. And like me and my buddy that grew up together were like, would you ever let, like our daughters are the same age as we are now, would you let them ride to the 7-Eleven that we used to go to? And we're like, fuck no, right? Like unless we're riding with them.
Yeah.
Like free play of kids just being gone all day and kind of learning how to deal with bullies and like the mean one in their neighborhood. And yeah, maybe they get in a little tussle when you're 6 or 7 and one guy gets a little bip in the nose, but you learn. I've seen it so many times when I was going to high school and younger, where like that kid that was totally not a fighter got picked on, and he was like, fuck it. You know what? You just want to fucking, let's fuck. And he just goes at the bully, right? And sometimes he shocks the bully, right? Because sometimes the guy's like kind of like athletic and kind of like beats a bully or kind of leaves him. And then the bully never bugged him, where he fucking had it, right? He's just like, boom. And then it's over. And then their life changes. And then, you know, it's not some kids repressing that for years and years. And then they go get a gun and shoot people. And like, I think there's something really getting lost in society where there's no free play anymore. And then to take away sports where kids learn, because all that happens too. You played on sports team. You have kind of the guy that's like he's like the man, and sometimes he's kind of cocky and he's the one snapping the towel in the change room and being a dick and hiding your clothes. And like, you know, there's good pranks and bad pranks, and then you'll pick on the one kid too much. And then I remember in football, it was great. I saw the kid when he just had it with one of our guys and just tackled him and kind of got on him, and he was just flailing like this, but then the guy never bugged him again, right? Like I agree. Like I think it's so stupid that we're taking those away. I think they're doing far more harm than people realize. Like, and when, especially now with what they're showing with studies, that not everybody learns the same. Like a lot of people like me that have, like, I'm diagnosed ADD, but I think everybody is when it's something boring. But you know, like, yeah, I have ADD until it's something I'm fascinated in. Then you can't pull me away, right? But yeah, you want me to learn fucking algebra, shoot me in the face now. It's miserable. Well,
that's
right?
What your documentary was. So the union, you guys did an awesome job with that, because the whole thing about like you were almost preparing for ADD kids before there were really ADD kids, because like today, because we're always distracted, we constantly got things going on. So it's like I'm a huge into documentaries. I'm not a huge reader, which is why I always got filmmakers on this show and not authors. But the thing is, like, your movie was awesome because I could actually get people to sit through the whole thing and be entertained. Like there's constantly, like you said, there's little clips that were funny, there's good interviews, there's you traveling to different places, so it was constantly something going on. So instead of doing like, okay, Inside Job, that movie about the collapse, you know, it was just like monotone talking. It was, you know, and it was just like a lot of good information, but boy, it was fucking hard to like just sit there and listen and consume it all. And we learned better. And I had Daniele Bignelli on the show. He was one of my first guests on the show last year, and he was also in I Am Bruce Lee.
Daniele is excellent. I love Daniele.
Yeah, he's awesome. And I had him on, and we talked about that, how like the big problem with that educational system, because I love history now. I've had Dan Carlin on the show, love history, and it's just like, in high school, I hated history because they were just giving me names and dates, and once you relate it to your life, once you know why it's important. If somebody told me, okay, in the 1940s, you know, World War II happened, I'm like, who gives a fuck? But if somebody says, hey, if Hitler won, we'd all be speaking German right now, you would never know the language you speak. I'd be like, what the fuck did you just say? Like, all of a sudden, I'm intrigued and I'm listening. So that's so important. Like, it's how you get the information across, and you guys did an awesome job with that. And that's why I think the celebrities and stuff, like, that's important. Like, I think
it's totally, that's where people don't understand the madness behind, and that's exactly where Brett is so good at that, where he'll make sure that there's that humor in there, right, and that stuff, because the humor is what help. Like the opening of the Union, right, when it's like you remember the first Prohibition, right, and I'm like, and I'm like, right, and he's like, which was, and I'm like, well, Prohibition of alcohol. He's like, no, I'm talking about the first Prohibition. Thou shalt not partake of the tree, the fruit of knowledge. And who was the big cop? And, you know, he points upstairs, like, and how many people did he have to watch? 2. right? But like it's fictional, but it gets you to realizing like this battle we're going on. We're like, yeah, fuck. If the Almighty couldn't get two people to stop doing, how the fuck do we think we're going to control millions of people from wanting to expand their consciousness, right? But those little things are so. That's all Brett, the director. He's a genius that way, and it's the big thing that even. It's funny how even I didn't really understand it until we went to Parliament Hill. And the members of parliament and the senators were the ones that made that comment where they're like, you know, just wasn't just amazing with the information. It was so entertaining. And that entertainment is what allows your mind to absorb it, because I'm just like you. Like, I don't read much other than I have to read the reports and stuff I have to do for the union because we have to, but I'm not a big reader. I watch documentaries. And if it gets too monotone, like, an Inconvenient Truth, right, which – I mean, originally that was just supposed to be a PowerPoint presentation anyway that they ended up turning into a movie, but you have to have it be fun, and you have to have, that's why Brett is so picky on my voiceover when I do it, that he's like, okay, like, because if I get something a little too insinuative, he's like, Adam, now it sounds like you have an opinion. Don't need that. Just cut it down and just say it like this, or certain things where he's like, I want you to bring that word up when you say it so it sounds more like you're posing the question versus then making a statement. And like, I was like, I remember doing the voiceover day. I'm like, you're really fucking pissing me off, right? And he's like, bring it down to this one, bring it up here. It's good work, right? Like, I was like, it helps you. It's what allows you to retain it. And now, I mean, the memes and the one-liners that are from I think there's people that have gotten it like second and third generation, they even realize, because I've heard some people in Congress use the milk quote from. They're like, you know, the marijuana addiction thing's ridiculous. It could, you know, what I started drinking milk. It could be said I started on that. And I'm like, dude, that's like almost fucking exactly from Norm Stamper. But it's people that I don't think have watched our movie, but probably somebody else, they heard that quote. Because I know even I do it. I hear a great quote if someone's saying something or posing something in a great way. And then I pick up on that. I'm like, oh, I'm going to phrase that.
Now,
right.
I've taken a lot of your time, and I think you got to walk somebody soon. But real quick, did you on the new film, which is coming out late this year, right? And
yeah, it'll be coming out. We plan to release in October in the fall. The teaser just released last Sunday, 4/20.
Yeah, that was awesome. And you guys are obviously a lot of big names, and I think that's a great way of getting attention on an important issue, because I had Pete McGrain from he did the movie Ethos with Woody Harrelson. And same thing. We talked about how it was awesome that you got Woody Harrelson there, because it's such an important documentary, and you can get somebody who might. I tell people, hey, you should watch this documentary. It talks about social engineering and the Fed and the history of it.
And then people are like, no. But then if you say Woody Harrelson's involved, then
exactly,
like, you know,
yeah, exactly. So I think that's awesome. And you know what? I had Ben McLeish on last podcast, and we were talking about how people's, you know, because you were saying how people are like, oh, who cares about Snoop Dogg's opinion or this person's opinion? Who gives a fuck about a politician's opinion? Who cares about that? Like.
It's such a dumb thing, but you know, you can't even argue with people like that. But that's sort of like, they're like, well, who really cares about this guy's opinion? I'm like, who cares about a doctor's opinion for that matter, or my opinion, the filmmaker? Should we just not do anything, right? The thing is that here, you know, you want to take something, whether you like Snoop or not, he's had a #1 record for 3 decades every year. Right? And he's been a chronic smoker. So he's perfect for that old cliche is you can't be successful and be a chronic smoker. That's just simply not true. Right? And then people are like, well, what's Richard Branson have to say? I'm like, Richard Branson's the perfect person to get forward, because you can show that, you know, really intelligent billionaires think that the drug war's fucking ridiculous because they've looked at it and they're like, it doesn't make sense. Right? So that's another reason why you get somebody like him, because even just the fact that we've interviewed him, so many people look at our project way more seriously now. Because people are like, oh, another pot doc. And like, yeah, but it's got Richard Branson. Like, you guys interview what? Richard Branson's in it? Like, you got him for an interview? Like, yeah. And then people are like, oh, wow. Yeah. Right? And then there's the whole marketing part of it too, right? That they put him on for marketing standpoints. And
yeah.
So exactly, you understand completely. Like exactly, like what's a scientist's point of view? Because it's just his studies. What's a politician's point of view? What's anybody's point of view? Well, it's their point of view. That's the idea.
Well, I can tell you're similar to me. You're you know, you love conversation, and because of it, like I'm sure you get in many conversations everywhere you go with people. And one thing I've learned is it doesn't matter if the person's a Vietnam vet or if there's a pizzeria owner. Like you can, there's a lot of people who have well thought out opinions, and unfortunately, sometimes we base people's how important their opinion is or how well thought out it is based on who they are, and they're and not based on just the information. I've had great conversations with people, old people that are retired and just sitting around on the porch, and I'm doing some construction work in front of their house, and I end up bullshitting with them, and I'm like, holy fuck, this guy has a great perspective on the world, on past wars, on whatever. So I'm like, why would his opinion mean any less? It's like, let's look at the information and not who's saying it. So that's
great. That's a great point. Kind of goes back to that Graham Hancock thing you said, though, where it's like we're more caught up in what the car is that they're driving instead of how many rides have they given to people.
Absolutely,
in that car.
We're judging people based on material things,
and with that same statement is why you have to put some of these big iconic figures, because all of a sudden they're considered more relevant, right? And let's just be honest, like, celebrities get people's attention. They get this thing mainstream. So you use the big names to get your film mainstream. But then the meat and potatoes are the Professor David Nutt's, the Dr. Lester Grinspoons, the Deputy Police Chief, of L.A., Stephen Downing, Judge Jim Gray, Mike Trace, the former deputy drug czar, or all these people, or Graham Hancock, who's a great, like, what is Graham Hancock's opinion? He's an author, right? He's a brilliant man. Don't get me wrong, and we love him. And he's fucking, his quotes are, we have all this shit with him. But at the end of the day, it's like, really, he's just a really great author and archaeologist, right? But he doesn't really.
Yeah, and he started off as
a good understanding of ancient civilizations because he's done a lot of research. But and even me, like, now I'm getting booked to speak at universities and stuff, and it's like, I always say to them, I'm like, listen, I'm like, if you're looking for an activist, I'm not your guy, right? If you're looking for a filmmaker that's learned a lot, and it was funny because I just got booked on this like speaking tour. I've got an agent now that reps me for colleges and universities. And she was like, well, what kind of stuff can you talk about? I'm like, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the film industry and how it's changed with social media and connecting on crowdfunding? Because I have the 8th highest grossing documentary in crowdfunding history on Kickstarter. Or if you want to go into marijuana, I can go into the medical argument. I can go into the law enforcement argument. I can go into the hemp argument. I can go into all of them. Which one do you want to go? Unfortunately, those are ingrained in my head pretty tightly and usually come up in a lot of conversations, whether people want to listen to them or not.
Yeah. So you're going to be talking about, I'm guessing, the Portugal experiment when
absolutely. We actually interviewed We interviewed Alex Stevens, who's one of the head criminologists that's been examining the Portugal experiment. Julian Houpert, who's a member of parliament in the UK, who's the senior scientist on the parliamentary board looking at the Portugal example. And we interviewed somebody else that really took to it, because it's amazing how many people don't know what's going on in Portugal, right? Yet they criminalize all drugs, drugs. Yeah,
I was born there, but it's weird because I live in Ludlow, which is right near Springfield, Mass, near where the Basketball Hall of Fame is, and we have like this really big Portuguese community in our town, and it's all Polish and Portuguese, and there's a lot of people here who still go back, who were born there, live here, still go back every year, and I'll have a conversation with them. I'm like, isn't it pretty crazy how well like the example that Portugal is to the world on decriminalizing drugs? They're like, oh, they didn't decriminalize everything. I'm like, yeah, they did. And they're like, they did? And I'm like, yeah. So when you go back to Portugal and everything's civil and nothing's changed, guess what? Like the idea that it's going to be madness.
The horror stories haven't happened. There's not crackheads on the street killing everybody. Yeah. For your listeners that don't know, yes, Portugal decriminalized everything. That's crystal meth, cocaine, heroin, crack. It's all decriminalized. But if you understand the way they implemented their system, it works great. Is that anyone, if they have over a certain amount of the illegal substance,
like 10 days, right? I believe.
Yeah, 10 days supply, then they get charged just like before. Then it's just trafficking and it's regular drugs, so just like before. So, but then if they have less than that, then they're treated as someone that has possibly a substance abuse problem, and then they get to talk to a drug abuse counselor, a psychiatrist, and everybody else, and then they can determine whether they have a problem or not. And they found out that, hey, guess what? 65% more people went into rehab and stayed sober, because when they were treated like someone with compassion, that they had a problem, they were willing to get help rather than just thrown in a cage with no help and still able to support their havoc through drug addicts in prison, right? Wow. And then the law enforcement that thought it was going to make more problems actually found that they were able to save time, because now all these people that had simple addictions or minor possession were getting dealt with on the health system. They were no longer part of the legal system. So then they could focus on the more heinous crimes, like the big drug traffickers, the people bringing weapons into the country, or rapes, or murders, or all the other things. In fact, Julian Hooper, the senior scientist of the members of parliament, said that originally when they first went to pass the bill, there was obviously tons of opposition, right, that were totally against it. But now you can't find one person from whether it's fire department, law enforcement, medical that are against the system. The only thing that's being debated now is maybe how many days. They might, like some people are saying that it shouldn't be 10 days, maybe it should just be a week's supply or whatever. That's being debated. But the decriminalized model, they all love it now. They all see that they brought down their AIDS, which was like Portugal was one of the worst countries in the EU for AIDS epidemic. They brought it down by 85%. They brought down their new users of heroin by like 35%. Like the only thing that's gone up is that new users of drugs over the age of 65 have gone up by about 2.5 to 5%. But you know what? If you're at 65 and you want to try cocaine for the first time,
why not? Yeah.
You want to smoke a little weed, you're retired, who fucking cares, right? Like, you know, and that age, who cares? Even if you want to, even if you become a substance abuse addict, your wife died and your kids died or something, you want to go fucking
You fucking deserve it. Do what you want. You deserve it. Yeah, you deserve it. If you
the age of 65, and it was a slight increase. Like we're talking nothing at epidemic. It's like 2 to 5%. That was the only thing. But it's so funny how the Portugal experiment, unless you're looking for it, it is not talked about. Like when I bring that up to people, people are like, what? Portugal decriminalized? I'm like, everything. For over 10 years now. It's been in operation for almost 12 years. You know what? The country's running better than it was before. Amazing, right? It really was fascinating to sit down with those people this time, and it's interesting to see what's going to happen in 2016, because that's where a lot of other countries are waiting for the big UN summit. And because the United States has been a big pusher of the global drug war for years, pushing other countries to enforce their drug laws or similar. Otherwise, they wouldn't get UN support. Otherwise, the United States wouldn't support them. But now a lot of these countries are saying, hey, you know what? We wanted to decriminalize marijuana for a long time, and now you guys can't bully us anymore because you have 2 states in your own backyard that have fucking legalized it. So don't fucking come and point your finger over here in our country. Worry about your own backyard, right? So it'll be interesting. 2016 is going to be a big year to see what happens. But I still feel, unfortunately, there's a long way to go. There's still a lot of money, power, and corruption influencing politicians in the UN. So it isn't going to be an easy fix.
Yeah, yeah. So before I let you go, what's coming up on your podcast? You have the one you just did recently that you're releasing, right?
Yeah, just did Jen Bryony, and I had also, it's called the Scorgie Exchange. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher. I don't do any video stuff for it now, mainly because being a filmmaker doing video, people are going to be really picky, and unless I can do it good like London Real, I don't want to do it. Just don't have that time right now, so it's just audio. But we had Riley Cote, who was a former winger for the Philadelphia Flyers, an enforcer, very fascinating perspective on that role, the guys that fight to protect the superstars. Our first podcast with my buddy Ara, who's a radio host and also a rapper and musician. He's probably coming on again next week, but I'm looking to have Brett on because we're going to do the voiceover for the Culture Eye here in the first couple weeks of May, because we lock picture at the end of the month. Woohoo! 3.5 years later, film is done. So I'm going to get Brett on, even though he's skeptical of doing that shit. I'm making him do it when he comes to Edmonton to record the voiceover. So Brett's coming up. We're going to have Ara back. I'm going to get Jeff Zimbalist, who directed the 2 Escobars. He did Arnold's
great movie. Yeah.
He also just did Youngstown Boys. He's a buddy of mine. I'm going to have him on. I'm also going to have my buddy Mike Titus, who's a writer and director out of LA. He did the 2 haunted houses there's one that just opened, Haunted House 2 and Haunted House 1 with the Wayans brothers.
Yeah, yeah.
He's an assistant and writer for them for years. Good buddy of mine. I know him from way back, but I want to do his live. It's been cool, man. Just that I've only had the podcast going for a month and been getting great responses. I got lots of listens, which is great. And now a lot of people saying, hey, when can I come on? Like, hey, you should do an interview with this guy. Hey, you should do an interview with this guy. And I'm like, as long as I'm interested in it, I'm like, fuck yeah. I was like, that's the whole reason I did it, is just so I can have an excuse to like get a chance to sit down with these people for 2 hours. So
yeah.
And just my interview with Billy, I've got a whole bunch of things like, you know, now we're looking where the way they're doing Cocaine Cowboys Reloaded. You know, now we're looking at doing like a same thing with the Culture High, because we had before we edited it down, we had 4 hours of edited sequences, and we can only have an hour and 20 tops with credits, right? So we had to get rid. So we have all these great sequences that are already edited that we can't put in the film. So I was like, fuck, we should maybe just do another version or do an extended. Obviously, we'll have DVD extra features in the DVD as well. So the DVD will be in value and getting on top of the VOD. But like I told the guys, I'm like, listen, like with all that shit, like, you know, we're going to have, like, maybe we can use some old archival footage or do a small Kickstarter campaign for 10 to 20 grand and, you know, shoot a couple things and relicense. Like, you know, you could do a half-hour piece just on Dr. Lester Grinspoon and everything he's done with all his reports and his son having leukemia and them using cannabis on their son and him being a witness for John Lennon and helping John Lennon get off the hashish charges. Like, he's a story in himself. So, and it was great just by having Billy on my podcast. That's now come to light, right? So I love it. And as long as people still want to listen, and actually, you know what? I'm being selfish on this one. Fuck them if they don't want to listen. I'm just enjoying interviewing people and hearing their perspective because, as you've seen during this podcast, I don't shut up and I like talking to other people. So I enjoy doing it. And if people tune in at the same time, great.
Well, that one thing I say a lot, like people are like, "Oh, dude, you love talking," and I'm like, "Well, even though like a lot of us, like me and you, who are good talkers, I think we like conversation more than talking. We like the idea of like sharing ideas and listening just as much as talking. You know, we're like, there's some people we know that just like talking. Like they don't. There's two people. There's people who listen and people who wait for their turn to talk. You know, and usually if you're good at conversations, like, you know, people like you and I, like. We enjoy the listening part as much as sharing our own ideas. So I think that's like a talent you have, and that's something you have to be good at when you do a podcast, because you have to be able to feed off each other. Like, I usually write down a couple notes, but they go out the fucking window like 2 seconds into the show. I'm just like, dude, I don't care if I don't talk about any of this stuff I wrote down. I usually write down just a couple of things in case I forget, and most of the time I never get to them. And so it's but that's fun, you know. And we have an excuse to talk. Like you said, we have an excuse to sit down, especially with our busy fucking lives. We're constantly like have to go here, have to go there, you know. So it's like we have a chance to like sit down and have an hour.
90% of the conversations in our life are bullshit.
Yeah.
And I mean by that, for people who don't know, and we used to learn this when I went to acting school, was like, think about your regular elevator conversation, right? Say you just got in the worst fight with your fucking wife or girlfriend, you're fucking pissed off, fuck, I'm fucking mad. And then someone comes in the elevator, what are you going to say? They're like, how you doing? Good, you, good, yeah. And then you know how sometimes you don't even really listen to someone says when they'll say, oh, what have you been up to, if you kind of know them, but you're expecting them to say, how you doing? And you're just like, good, right? Because you're not really listening, right? You're just ready to react. You're just like, when you're really thinking in the elevator, that person will be like, I hope this motherfucker doesn't want to talk to me, so I'm so fucking mad right now. I'll probably just want to punch you in your face. Hey, how are you doing today? Good, you? Yeah. Right? That's just the way it is, right? So when you get on a podcast and you get to go back and forth and really hash out some ideas and talk about things, it's a great way to have a nice, organic, real conversation. And that's why for me, literally some of my best friends are like, oh, fuck, Adam, you should have started a podcast 10 years ago. You're the guy that loves to talk, and we love to hear your stories and love to get you wound up and going. They're like, a lot of my old boys, all my old roommates from New York, they'll literally just have a plan. They're like, let's just get Adam to tell this story and watch him just go fucking off. So like they'll all be sitting there like, Adam, whatever happened with like that guy back in the bar? And I'm like, oh man, you went what? And then they all start laughing. What are you guys all fucking laughing at? What'd you set me up for? And they're like, dude, we just knew you'd go off about this and to tee you up, right? And to see you go.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with passion too. Like if I get talking about something like pharmaceutical drugs, big pharma, or foreign policy, or how poorly we treat our veterans, you know, like 40% of our homeless people are veterans, which we should be ashamed of, and like those things really piss me off, you know. So and I'm passionate about those things, and so like if you get talking about something you really are passionate about, it's hard not to talk and not share this information and hope that, you know, the reason why this show is called The Ripple Effect, and hope you start your own little ripple of like sharing information and different perspectives. So I definitely think it's an awesome thing when people.
I got what you meant with the ripple effect right away when I read the title of your podcast, and that's why I went with the Scorgie exchange, because I always like it. It's just an exchange of positive conversation and creativity. Yeah, because it's going back and forth. No real. When people are like, "What's the basis of your podcast?" I'm like, "Nothing."
Yeah, talk. I'm the same way. Right? Yeah,
maybe kind of fall back on film like Joe does with comedy, because I know a lot of people in the film industry, so it'll always kind of fall back on that. But other than that, it's just like, oh, this guy's cool. He's an MMA guy. Fuck, you do my podcast. Boom, we're gonna have him on.
Yeah. Well,
right?
like you said before I think we started recording, like the cool thing about like even with this show, like I got a couple of musicians coming up, artists I like, Imperative Reaction, Ted from Imperative Reaction, Inner Party Systems, old drummer. Like, but I have filmmakers. I want to have a little bit of everything, so that way nobody expects anything. You know, it's like I can just have whoever, and nobody's like, dude, I don't know who the fuck he's gonna have next. But it's like once you build that platform like that, you don't have to. There's no expectations you have to kind of fulfill. You know, you can kind of do whatever fuck you want. Like you said about Rogan, like he's like, dude, people are used to me just stating my mind and being me, so I never have to put up a front and be fake. You know, so that's a good thing. You know.
It's a way better thing. Yeah, way better.
So, well, thanks, Adam. I really appreciate you being with us. Like I expected, you killed it, and you know.
Well, I hope your fans are there's. I've been doing so much of my own podcast now. People are like, "Okay, I'm getting sick of that motherfucking Canadian." Enough of him. But no, thank you very much for having me on, man. I love doing these podcasts, and yeah, I better get back to the fam here. I'm sure the wife is gonna love me. She's starting to hate the word podcast. She fucking hates that word.
Dude, my girlfriend's the same way. It's like every day it's like, dude, I'm gonna have Adam on, you know, from that movie, and I'm like, oh, and he was on London Real, he was on Rogan, and I'm like, you know, we have so much in common, and you know, like, so it's crazy because it's like she's just like, dude, can you ever just stop talking about your podcast? I'm like, dude, I'm just excited. I'm excited. I'm just excited.
I bring up like Joe Rogan's podcast like too much, where I'm like, well, you know what? I heard this on the podcast. Like literally, I remember when we were filming The Good Son in Korea, our director Jesse turned to me. He's like, if you say Joe Rogan podcast one more time, I'm going to punch you. He's like, well, I'm not actually going to punch you because you punched me back, but I'll be really fucking upset. Do not say it again. Because I think that was when I got into his podcast, and I'd listened to like Graham Hancock, and there was like in a row there was like 10 dynamite ones.
Yeah.
I was like, holy fuck. And like my whole, like literally my world changed, my perspective, the way I looked at things changed from some of these interviews. So I was just sharing what I learned. I was like, man, but you got to hear like Graham Hancock like talked about it this way, and it was so cool. And like I didn't even know who he was, right? Yeah. And now because of those, we interviewed him for The Culture High, and fuck, The Culture High is a better movie because of it, 100%.
Yeah. No, he did the same thing for me. One of the reasons I got into podcasts are because of him, and it was just awesome that he got to share all these really interesting people that I didn't know anything about. And I'm like, holy shit! I'm like, how did I not know who fucking Graham Hancock is? I'm like, this guy. I mean, just how he talks about psychedelics and lost civilization.
He's like a real life Indiana Jones, man.
Yeah.
Like underwater dives, discover ancient civilizations and shit. I was like, holy fuck! That's what I was like too. I was like, and I remember when I went on Joe's show. It was before the show, right before we started recording. But they're like, I was like, dude, this is like a bucket list. They're like, because Joe was late, and he's like, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, dude, fuck, this is a bucket list for me. I don't care. You could have said like, we're not rolling till midnight now, and I've been like, no problem, right? And literally, you know, Brian was like. So Brian was going, he's like, well, so you listened to it? He's like, did you listen to the Graham Hancock one? I'm like, podcast 142? Are you fucking kidding me? It stays on my iPod. They're like, whoa. I'm like, oh yeah, dude. Like when I say I'm a fan of the show, he's doing so many though. I'm falling behind here.
Dude, it's hard. And he kills it. He had one not too long ago where he did like a 6-hour show. Like I think it was one of his pool buddies, and he did like 3 hours. They took a break, and then he did 3 more hours. I'm like, this motherfucker. And he does, like, if you listen to him, like, you would never know that it's all in one take. Like, it's crazy. I mean, he's like, everybody wants to be that, you know? It's like, just.
Well, that's the thing I don't think enough people give. Like, that's why I literally just say on my fucking podcast, this is Joe Rogan inspired. Like, till or if I ever get sponsors, I just throw it because I think he's inspired the podcast game. Like,
absolutely.
Maybe there was many around, but I didn't hear of any till his. Now it seems like there's a fucking new one every week,
dude.
Right?
Daniele Bagnelli was because of Joe Rogan. You, Cara Santa, yours, mine, London Real, Cara Santa Maria. I mean, look how many great podcasts he did. Because of basically came about because he influenced them.
My co-producer on my show, the Pursuit podcast in Houston, Matt Staggs with his podcast.
Disinfo.
Disinfo. They were all from him. Like they all started. Whereas it's like, fuck. Like no, I know. And now my buddy Ara, that was on my first one, he's like, dude, I want to do my own one. He's like, I had so many people tweeting me like, where can I hear my music? Hear your music. I didn't know you were a musician. I didn't know you write. Like. He's like, dude, like literally, he texted me last week, like, when are we going on again? I'm like, we can do it next week. Come back on, buddy.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Hey, thanks. So, Hey, thanks, Adam. I won't hold you up anymore. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and keep in touch, man. I'm looking forward to watching The Culture High.
You too, brother. Well, we're gonna have a big screening in Boston, so you'll have to come out there. We got a lot of connections. That's where Well, that's where Lester Grinspoon's from, and the normal chapter out there has brought me out lots in Massachusetts. I got good boys out there, my buddy Jeff Morris and Matt. So
awesome.
There's a big one out there. So you'll have to come. We'll meet in person then.
Yo, yeah, that'd be awesome, man. Because yeah, Boston's not that far. I go up there for Celtics games and then Bruin games.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't that far. So that's why I said, and then we can maybe do like a 50-50 podcast, like Scorgie Ripple Effect, where you do one half on one and one half on the other, right? Just like Rogan. Well, thanks a lot for having me on, man. I appreciate it. I hope your listeners enjoyed it, and we'll have to do it again if you want. I mean, I'm available.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks, Adam. Have a good one. Hopefully your family's not pissed at you, but they're probably used to it by now.
Oh, they're used to it. I'm pretty good. I'm not away that bad, so my wife's getting used to it. But we make do.
Awesome.
All right, brother.
See you, Adam.
Believe in the ripple effect.